Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fleet's Catch-Up Ramblings. It is better to catch up than to fade away, my friends. Oh yes, it absolutely is. Hope you're all having a fantastic, Friday. I know I am. It's been a heck of a good week, one of the best weeks for some time. And I hope you, like me, are also enjoying the arrival of the weekend. As we all know, the weekend is the best time of the week for most of us. Apart from you poor buggers who work weekends, I've been there. You have my sympathy. Stay strong, folks. And just power on through to whenever your day is off. So, got a decent number of questions to get through, but nothing too strenuous, so it should be a nice... fairly concise ramblings, but because obviously we shouldn't have too much to get through, there should be plenty of time for tangents. Good evening, Richard Goss. Always a pleasure to see new people in the chat. Always nice to see. It means people actually, for some reason, are finding me, which is bizarre. Welcome to Fleet's Random Ramblings. I hope you're all having a fantastic time. Like I say, happy Friday, everybody. Just... It's always very, very good. Beautiful stuff. Alrighty then. So, without further ado... And let me just let... There we go, make sure that's all sorted. And without further ado, let's get the dry dock audience in, and we can get started. Good times, good times. Okay, so, Catchup Ramblings. Let me just pull up the old, Oh, that's the one thing I meant to do. I knew there was something that was bugging me that I hadn't done. And it was bringing up the actual document for, for Catchup Ramblings. And I keep forgetting to do it every time before I start. And it keeps catching me out. One of these days, I'm gonna get it all set up. Everything else was set up. And that one thing, I forgot. Just, well, never mind.
No, God.
It wouldn't be Fleet without a few slip-ups. Hello, Timu. Hello, Mark. I mean, it wouldn't be Fleet of Oceans and the Ramblings without a few slip-ups. That's just the way it goes. Let me have a look. So, where are we? It's all in 69. Did that one. Did that. That looks to be that's a decent chunk of questions there. Nothing too strenuous.
You can thank Gunnery Officer for that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sweet Jesus. Bloody hell, that man has zero chill. That's not a bad thing, necessarily. Oh, and I see you actually put YT&D. Fantastic. It's very, very good. Okay, then. So I think the first question is, what do the panel think of the Super Destroyer from Helldivers 2? I think it's a very unique ship design. I think it seems to be set up fairly well for a world in which we don't see much combat in space. I think it's called a Super Destroyer to be catchy, and because the ship type most people in the modern world who aren't naval historians or familiar with the military generally will be familiar with is a destroyer. So
I think they're a pretty meh design. Visually, they're nice looking, but internally they are inefficient, have poor layouts. Their weaponry, it makes no sense.
Yep.
There is actual space combat that we're aware of, so why are these ships used for space combat?
Don't think they are.
They are. These are ships used for space combat.
Then again, it just fits into the whole thing. Super Earth, incredibly inefficient, stupidly wasteful.
There's a reason I don't like Super Earth.
Well, no one does.
Yes, they do.
No.
Yes.
No one unironically
A lot
likes...
of the community unironically likes Super Earth.
You know, despite... Well, but then again, given the current president of the US, yeah, that honestly doesn't surprise me. Given how the US is headed towards a Super Earth-style government. Dear.
You're getting a little close to being political there.
This is Ramblings. I'm allowed to be political. We literally had a whole thing where Cyclic and Hood were here, and we... were you not here on Monday? Did you miss how political we got on Monday? And that was with Cyclic.
I must have done.
Yeah, that wasn't even close to where we got on Monday. Do you remember Monday?
That was with Cyclic.
Yeah, like that was barely dipping our toes in that one. That was that was barely dipping the toes.
SW's every ship's a destroyer and battleship. Honestly, you probably couldn't even say most of them they're just battleships.
Yeah.
Because most media describes it as battleship. I've heard stuff referred to as the German lost battleships, referring to destroyers lost at Narvik.
Yeah. Well,
What?
To be fair, Dragon, that's American media. European media is a lot
No,
better.
this was actually European.
Depends which European.
Well-
BBC's usually quite good, describing frigates as frigates, destroyers as
That's-
destroyers.
That's disappointing.
BBC's only 50% accurate, I would say, of the time.
I give that puts them leagues ahead of most of the rest of the
50%
media.
accurate half the time, so 25%.
Yeah. Oh, bugger. Question for Dr. Clark, who isn't here. Well, bugger.
Yes, that could be an issue.
Well, that'll have to wait until a Catchup Ramblings when he is here, or when he's here, if he's here, which he may not be here. We don't know.
He may show up later,
what
too.
Is each member of the panel's favourite ship used in Halo, either the Covenant, UNSC, or Forerunners? So my favourite ship from Halo, I'm sorry, the frigates are iconic. That twin engine array aft and the mat cannons forwards,
I have an embarrassing confession.
It is iconic.
I have not played Halo.
It is iconically UNSC, and I love that aesthetic.
The ships that I like from Halo are none of the ones we've seen on screen. I absolutely despise the ships we've seen on screen, because you have the Paris, the Charon, and it's not the Strident, it's the other one, Salwat. And they're literally just copy-paste rescales, which I hate, with some ever so slight minor modifications. And they can't even be argued to be successors to each other, because they're actually the same period.
I mean, I would point out that if design works for light shooty ship, then if you need different scales of light shooty ship, and you're working with future...
But they're not that different in scale. They're like 10 to
What's
20 meters
What's
difference.
the one ship that went off on like a solo mission for dozens of years or something?
Do you have any?
Spirit of Fire. I think he means.
You mean the one that loses its FTL drive?
Yeah.
I think he means
Spirit of Fire. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about Spirit of Fire.
Good. But no, give me a Punic class any day.
Yeah, fair enough. Each their own. Do you think the Fairly Gannet is better than the AF Guardian? What in the name of flippity flip is the AF Guardian? Let's crack open the Google and... Oh, yes. Yes, the Fairly Gannet is absolutely better than the AF Guardian, given the Fairly Gannet is a... I think the Gannet has got at least 5 years. On...
Yeah, manufactured 1953 for the Gannet.
Yeah, but also, if you look at the Gannet and then you look at the Grumman AF Guardian, the Guardian doesn't really have much growth room. With the Gannet, you have a lot... Yeah, with the Gannet, you have a lot more growth room. Because, A, it uses a turboprop, which gives you more power.
There's a reason they only stay in service for 5 years.
Yeah. The thing is, the US could afford to do stuff like this because it had the money to burn on projects like that to give capability now while mature capability developed.
Yes, Internal Empire, the infinite money glitch.
Whereas the Royal Navy had to accept not having a mature capability until one was ready. But again, it was absolutely better. Just not even. It's not even a contest. Thoughts on the USN nuclear strike cruiser and why did it fail? Seems that the USN needs a nuclear cruiser to screen their nuclear carriers more than ever. Simply put, despite
Money.
despite the vast amounts of money being thrown around at the US Navy, especially in the 1980s.
Well, I think it's mostly the peace dividend that killed it, didn't it?
Nope.
Or was that earlier?
No.
There's also the whole problem that that nuclear ships in civilian ports was still a big issue.
Oh, it was.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
The anti-nuclear
Honestly,
shit.
yeah. The strike cruiser was also there was a problem with nukes. These were the ships that the Ticonderogas were supposed to escort,
Ah,
and the Tychos ended up being slightly expanded to become the cruisers, rather than being the escorts for the cruisers. They're supposed to reintroduce the 8-inch gun to the US Navy in a single mount forward. In that, that weird cone turret, the cone.
why does the U.S. like the Coden turret so much?
It made sense. It was a good way to save weight and actually still have enough working room for the gun and the mechanism.
It explicitly only works though for single guns. As soon as you go twin, it loses its effectiveness.
Yeah, but with an
It also is better for
8-inch, with an 8-inch auto-loading single, it's all you need. Just yes, yeet, 8-inch round be upon you. But yeah, again, there wasn't enough money to go around. There just wasn't enough money to go around. And like I said, the whole issue with basing them as well. The US instead lent into the idea of conventional surface combatants that weren't nuke-driven and expanding its replenishment fleet, and that's worked far better for them as an overall doctrine. So what's next? So did that one. Why do they make it so you can't go around Earth in Star Trek Online anymore? I have no idea because I don't play it. This is one for Dragon.
Simple, because the new map was far larger in quality and texture. Also, there was nothing on the other side of Earth, so why would you need to go there? Also, hello, Fox. I see you down there.
Question 3. What was the reason for the Challenger tank going with the Rheinmetall 120L35 instead of the British developing their own smoothbore gun? Why bother? It exists. It's a proven platform. It's the standard NATO. By fitting it to the Challenger, it becomes the standard NATO tank gun now for everything, basically, that doesn't have an L7.
It's something more important than it. The guns of the Challenger 1 were made at Royal Ordnance Leeds. That factory doesn't exist anymore.
And also, more to the point,
The UK,
why...
they can't manufacture their own 20s.
Even if we could, why would we? At this point,
Because it would be better for us to manufacture them in our own country, honestly.
the problem that we've got is that we're part of an alliance structure that's unlikely to collapse.
But also,
supply
we
of those-
can't rely on Rheinmetall half the time, so it would make sense to have our own
we? Do you
because
know?
they have trouble. Because they have
But
trouble
it's just
supplying them. And also, if we have them on our own, we could always, if we have our own production capability, if the Germans ever get uppity again, we can go, well, we're no longer reliant on you to do this.
I would point out that,
Some form of self-reliance
yes, I will point out
is reasonable.
there comes a point when self-reliance becomes a detriment rather than a value. And given the size of the tank fleet, that is, we are at the point now where, honestly, when it comes to replacing Challenger, we need to buy foreign. Just
No.
because.
No. No.
No, Dragon, look how much it's costing us to just basically repair and rebuild a bunch of Challenger 2s into Challenger 3s.
Which is making them into one of the most effective combat platforms that will
It's making them
be
into
more effective than pretty much all of the current generation MBTs.
No, don't. No, I'm sorry, that's British
The
code.
closest one that even comes close is the
that's-
Abrams.
no,
the
that's-
Abrams are looking into upgrades.
No, that's British Dragon. Calling Challenger 3
You're
the
sure?
best main battle tank in
It-
the world is British.
it's definitely up there.
It's British hopium. It's
What's better?
No, bringing
What's better?
the latest marks of the Leopard.
No.
The latest marks.
Leopard has actually been proven to not be as effective. It's got worse interior crew comfort, worse overall crew spacing, inefficient systems compared to the Challengers. Like, we know this from actual service between the British and Germans using these vehicles. Britain does not like Leopards. They aren't better for British needs.
Buying a foreign tank for the British Army will never be tolerated. Well, I'm sorry, but
It
buying
never would be.
buying foreign equipment is going to have to become tolerated because at the end of the day,
No, it doesn't.
we are being Dragon. The price of military procurement keeps going up.
And it's stuff that we can afford to do if
No.
we actually put money into it.
There comes a point where countries get priced out of certain military items.
And we're not priced out yet. Stop being so Eurocentric.
Do you know why we're being priced out? It's because the cost per unit has gone up astronomically with production costs. Do you know why production costs have gone up astronomically? Because we're building fuck all of them.
If we actually built more of our own, and also if we stopped importing all this stuff from others, if we actually had our own inbuilt stuff, it would go down. It would still be expensive.
You're living in the 1980s. It is not the 1980s. You need to pull your head out of this nationalistic perspective and look at the bigger picture. We cannot build our own equipment anymore. We have to accept that Britain is a third-rank power now, and we have to act as such.
No,
Fuck, we aren't a second rank, bitch.
we're second rank. Because third rank fleet means we are below nations like Indonesia. And I'm sorry, if you're saying Britain's current military is below Indonesian levels, I think you're the one who needs to have your head checked. Britain is firmly a second-rate power, and we very much can afford to upgrade and work our own military systems. But it would require the government to stop constantly cutting all of the aspects of the British military and actually choose to fund it. Do you know why Do you realise why these are getting expensive? Because they cut all the factories making the guns, all the factories making ammo, which then incurs costs of import charges.
Yeah, you're looking at an ideal what Britain could do. I'm looking at what we should and will actually be able to do given the government's
Have import charges and potential for the
Wait, why should we pay the wages for Germans when we could be paying the wages for Britain?
No, whoa, no, listen. I agree with you two, but I also have to look at the actual fucking governments this country has and accept what is likely and what is realistic as procurement options for the British military.
Then if we're going off that, then they're not going to be buying foreign. They're just not going to be buying at all.
You're probably right.
So no.
That's right. We're already opening new ammunition production plants. Well, we're starting to produce 155 barrels again.
We're trying to restore our industry.
155 54 caliber barrels again. And
you'll forgive
one of
me
the last things one of the last things the Conservative government did was a major spending on revitalise the UK defence factories.
I'm sorry, I have to look at
restoring the Vickers Armstrong factory in Newcastle, which is one of the largest potential production plants in all of Europe.
I have to look at the pessimistic state of the UK military since the Second World War and go...
Okay, their fleet. Remind me how many tanks Germany are actually producing a year.
Let me have a look.
Because I think you'll find it's not that high.
And remember, Rheinmetall make most of their shit in Poland.
Let me just have a...
because this has been a known issue, which the companies who have bought from the countries which have bought from Germany are complaining that why is it taking so long to get these vehicles?
It's not even that, Dragon. Look at what the German government did to Rheinmetall when the Russia-Ukraine war kicked off. They dragged their feet on delivering equipment Ukraine had already bought.
Well, yeah, that's because the German government was horrifically afraid of escalation, but that's nothing new. The German government has always been horrifically afraid of escalation.
If the UK gets in conflict, do we want the ability to produce our own shit, or do we want to have to beg the Germans to let Rheinmetall send us the shit we've already bought?
Again, like I keep saying, I am on your side, but I am a realist. I am not.
You keep going on at me and Foxer for being pessimistic and not seeing the big picture. Perhaps this is where we should throw this around and say,
I'm going to ask a question here,
Yeah.
which is, in what scenario would Britain need tanks in which they would not also still have supply lines open?
anytime the German government does not like a policy made by Britain.
In a war scenario, let's put it that way.
If we don't agree to German demands. Like,
Right.
this has already been noticed a couple times where if you don't agree to what they want, they slow your orders down and slow your capabilities.
UK's experienced this. So are you aware of Heckler and Koch and the L85?
Yes, I'm aware.
With the A2 version. During the Falklands War, the German government blocked all the shipments of the rifles the UK had already brought because of the ongoing Falklands conflict.
Well, yes, that's...
So if a situation like this occurs again, which has been proven to happen, then it's a case of, well, we've spent all this money.
Well, yeah, I
That
know.
money's no
Again,
longer in the British Treasury,
I
and
agree.
we
I
still
keep
haven't got
saying...
what we
How
need.
many times can I say I agree?
Then why do you keep saying that it makes no sense for Britain to try and make its
Whoa,
own stuff?
who said anything about it not making sense? It makes perfect...
You about 5 minutes ago.
I said it makes perfect sense, but unfortunately, given the governments that we have, and the almost apoplectic, even with an ongoing conflict in Europe where a ostensible ally of ours, given how close we're getting to Ukraine now, is fighting for their fucking lives, and we're still barely rearming. We haven't even reached the early World War
welcome
II.
to what decades of peace do.
I'm aware of that, but we could be moving faster. We should be moving faster, but we're not. And if the government thought like you think it, if the government thought like you think it seems to be able of, we would be moving faster. And because it isn't,
No,
I
we
know
probably wouldn't be.
that I'm right.
No, and no, we wouldn't be moving faster because these things take time.
I point out that we've overset tripled artillery shell production this year.
That's not fast enough.
Fleet, it takes time.
What I
It's
mean
not
is...
just flick a switch and all of a sudden,
No,
we're back at war-grade production.
What I mean is that, yes, that's good, and I'm aware that's about the fastest it can be increasing in output per year, but at the same time, we should also be expanding the order for Type 26, we should be expanding the order for Challenger 3, we should be looking to reactivate the Vickers Armstrong factory, like you said.
Type 26 we probably don't need to expand currently. On the other hand, get these factories back up and running, we do. Production is more important than actual units at the moment.
I am aware, Dragon,
Units
but they
would
are not
be useful when we have the production capability.
They are not moving as fast as they should be.
No, I'm sorry, but renovating factories and production lines that haven't run since the 80s, that have been abandoned for the better part of 40 years, that takes literally years of construction work. And even then, we're retooling the lines with modern production techniques. So have you seen the plans for stuff like the Royal Ordnance factories that are producing ammunition?
No,
We're talking scale use of robotics to automate it. We're talking...
I think I need
we're
to
building the fucking...
I think you need to sit down with Cyclic and get told the real state of the UK defence procurement sector, because I've looked into it.
Yeah.
It's not as positive
Yes,
as you
and
think
so
it is.
but also
Yeah.
Cyclic paints a incredibly negative picture on anything British. He goes beyond the curve of, yes, we understand it's bad. Yes, we understand it is having trouble. But he goes so far beyond that to point a picture that the UK cannot do anything itself is a bit nuts.
Yeah, and he just stuff like dismissed the Royal Fleet Auxiliary out of fucking hand.
Like,
Still
a good number of people here have had a lot of disagreements with Cyclic, especially on his interpretation of British strategy. I remember the whole Centurion debate a while ago of how the Centurion was a useless tank because it didn't have very long range. Which was utter rubbish. And a lot of people in the audience disagreed with him.
I think
But-
he was right on that point.
He wasn't.
And I'll agree with him, because he was right.
He wasn't.
He was.
To the point, yeah, we disagreed with him, and as you pointed out, yeah, the Centurion was designed for defensive warfare for the British Army.
Yes, but tactical mobility matters, and the Centurion
It's
doesn't
right,
have that.
But Fleet, it's the fact that he then said the American tanks were so much better until we then proved they had the same range. Oh, well, they got oil drums. Most of these didn't.
Yeah, on that point, he just fucking dropped a clanger. On that, I
Like,
would
a lot of, no, in a lot, he then even Leslie from Clark Server, who was here and was talking about it, he completely dismissed Leslie entirely out of hand. And Leslie knows what he's talking about when it comes to this stuff. I agree, Cyclic is a very good font of knowledge, but at times, his interpretations are very skew-if.
I'm not denying that, but I did.
Anyway,
I did
moving on.
Yeah. Just that's. But yeah, like I say, it makes more sense to also just.
Yes, he did see Cube.
Well, yeah, the Centurion.
What did you say?
Like the Centurion isn't like the Centurion's a good tank, but it's not God's gift to MBTs like it's sometimes.
No one ever
suggested
said that.
No,
But
no,
he was
no.
actually
That
saying it was
wasn't.
a bad
No,
tank.
that wasn't what I said. Anyone said. I said it's like some people say. You hear commentary on the internet a lot calling the Centurion God's gift to MBTs sometimes, and it's not.
It was the first universal tank, yes,
In
but
1956 it was.
No, even I'm sorry, but the Russian
When
T-
he talked about the fucking 1940s, late 40s Centurion, I was saying it was shit because it compared poorly to the M60. That's what we got pissed off at him for.
I mean, to be fair, he missed a trick there. The actual reason that the Western MBTs aren't anything special is that T55 and T62 exist. And until you get things like M60 and Chieftain, the West does not pull ahead of the Russians in tank design.
It does.
yes, it does. Moving on.
Please, the L7 fucking 5 that they found
Moving
out
on.
punch a T62.
Why do you think the L7 was developed, Foxo?
Moving
That's my fucking point.
on.
Did the British have a more effective and active...
Only for literal Russian
Foxo,
fucking propaganda
Foxo.
here.
Foxo, just move on.
Did the British have a more effective and accurate bombing computer in the 1960s and 70s than the US, since the US bombing computer on their jet aircraft wasn't accurate during Vietnam, especially since they dropped hundreds of bombs on that one single bridge in North Vietnam, it didn't collapse it. On this question, I honestly don't know.
Yes in some, no in others.
Bombing computers are very specialised bits of kit, and
As I recall, on the British actual bombers, they were regarded as better, but on British normal aircraft, no, because most British aircraft didn't have bombing computers.
I'm going to base off what Leslie said when I answer this and go, it wasn't so much the British had better bombing computers. Arguably, the Americans had the better physical computers. But the British still specially trained crew members for bombing accuracy. And stuff like the navvies.
yeah.
And it was a massive difference in training, which allowed the British to be much more accurate. But in return, they needed an extra crew member.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you were saying?
Yeah, I think you're pretty much nailed on the head. Do you think the main gun on the Challenger 2 and 3 has better ammunition variant and more sophisticated ammunition than the ammo on the latest ammo on the Abrams main gun, like MPAT or AMP? No, not really.
I would say,
Should
that's where I'd
fire
actually
in
say
the
it's
same
probably about
shell?
equivalent.
Yeah, like
No, 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 no.
they both.
They're firing the same fucking shell.
That's what I was
Yeah,
gonna
that's what
say.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
I would say they are equivalent in this
Yeah,
case.
this is one.
Like,
NATO standardization is a thing for a fucking reason. If you go, I need
Yeah.
120 ammo, you just get 120 ammo, and you can fucking fire it. Yeet at enemy.
Look, there is a reason DM-33s are mean. Because the only NATO tank at this point that can't fire it are the T-72s of Poland and Romania and the Challenger 2.
Yeah. Cold War Europe in the late 1980s. Would you pick the Colt Commando as your assault rifle or the SA-80? The Colt Commando. It's an AR-15. It's a reliable, proven weapon. It will work and work and work. It's fairly easy to maintain. I mean, Europe have got a 30-round mag. It'll take standard NATO magazines. Fucking and also it's not an SA-80, which is another bonus.
Do I get the A2 version?
which
the
SA8? Which SA80 are we going off here?
It says late 1980s, so
If we're going off late 1980s, then we've got the good SA80.
do we? I thought that
You've
was
got the
it.
A2. You've got the A2. And quite frankly, I would take a ball pub over a standard rifle.
As someone who's not familiar with firearms that well, I personally, for me, I'd go with a traditionally arranged firearm. Because, obviously, as someone not that familiar with firearms, I would probably need the bare basic bitch way of holding a firearm.
Because all I'll say to anyone who doesn't like ball pubs is, okay, Grandma, it's not the 1970s, the 1970s anymore. Go back to your first generation M16 and molds. Ball pubs the fucking future, dumbasses. Anyway, next question.
Why would you take an SA80? What's it called, T-Cube? It weighs half as much, and is robust enough. Like, yeah,
I'll go through this. It's lighter. Because it's a bullpup, it's got a shorter length, which means it's easy to carry. It's firing similar enough rounds, depending on which version you get. And it's just more ergonomic.
like it's over 10 inches shorter in length.
Yeah.
So it really does depend on what you want. If you want a quick and easy rifle, I would use the SA80. If you're wanting something with that bit longer capability, then you might have a point for the Car 15.
No, but Dragon, you don't even have that. Because the S80 is a bullpup, it's got the same barrel length most of the time.
Do you think the VLS cells for Aster missiles are easy to replenish underway and import than Mark 41 VLS? First of all, no one can replenish VLS cells underway in any realistic capacity. The US is only just beginning to trial the idea of possibly, maybe, kind of, replenishing some VLS cells underway. It is not a
There
capability...
was that one Soviet ship
It is not a
where they
capability...
literally took out the full tubes
Yeah, but
and inserted new ones.
even so, it is still not a capability that basically any navy has nowadays. Not
Can't the
in...
Danes do it?
Pardon?
Can't the Danes do it?
No. No navy can replenish VLS cells underway.
Well, that's all the Danes have that system where they just pull out the entire box and put a new box in.
And even then, it's still... You are... I don't think it's something that can be done. I think you have to be in a sheltered area or in a complete flat calm to do. And at that point, it's basically impossible to do underway. Because you don't get a flat calm. Basically ever. Apart from when you do.
But this
And
is
it's,
a
and
bullshit.
even so, it's still... You don't get a flat calm. There might even be a slight wave chop. And at that point, well, shit. Fuck, that's it, you're done. Where is it? Where was I?
Next.
No. And it returns to being import. I think
It's not underway replenishment, really, but
no, but no. Import. There was also the import part of the question. Honestly, Mark 41 VLS or Aster missiles, it is box that goes up. To replenish, you pull empty box out, put full box in. It's really hard to make that a different system between VLSs. It's just it is pulling box out, putting box in. I don't think there's any real difference. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I can't comment. I don't know jack shit about this stuff.
Like, and even then, that's just my best guess. I can't see it being really that different for different type of VLS cells, unless there's a radical. Unless there's
that's the question: is there actually really a need for it as well?
Yeah, there's a reason why. Like, people are like the US is thinking about it in terms of a Pacific conflict where they have, where pulling a ship out to replenish VLS might not be practical. And that's it. It's the reason only the Americans are pursuing it. They're the only ones with a need to actually go. We may not be able to justify pulling a ship out because the combat may be that intense.
Clearly, you just make more ship.
That's the US is also looking at that as well and just going, let's just increase the size of the fleet so we don't have to do underway replenishment. Thoughts on the CVA-58, USS United States program? Do you think it's one of those crazy projects that are made to convince politicians to give a certain branch to the military funding and priorities for their programs? That's literally what it was. The carrier USS United States was basically the US Navy going, how do we remain relevant in a world where it's looking like the doctrine of operations is going to be dependent entirely about blowing our enemies to kingdom come with atomic weapons, and how do we stay relevant in that, and how does the US US Navy provide that capability where otherwise it's just the Air Force that can do that?
No.
That's literally...
USS United States was designed for more than that. She was even being designed before that was even a consideration.
But what she
was
turned
meant
into...
to...
No, she was designed with the primary mission of carrying long-range bomber aircraft that could carry a heavy enough load to undertake nuclear bombardment missions. It would also carry long-range fighters to fire long and protect its bombers.
She was ordered 1948.
Yes, okay, that's still... after
There's
the...
not really long-range nuclear weapons they used on these planes. Yes, there was something considered then. But she was also primarily designed to be a new, just large-scale carrier.
No, Dragon. Her primary purpose was that nuclear strike role. Her secondary purpose was also as a large carrier, but her primary purpose was that nuclear weapons delivery. 1948 is enough time for warhead miniaturization to start kicking in, and the reason she was so big is because the atomic weapons had not yet gotten small enough that you could carry them with normal carrier aircraft, so she had to be big enough to operate things like the Neptune, that could carry the smallest nuclear bombs in US inventory at the time.
Like, in terms of a design, though, she is more than just nuclear. She was not a crazy project designed to convince us.
No,
it was in consideration
before
this.
I never said she was
But
crazy.
I'm going off the question here.
But she
and
was...
the answer is no.
But she was this. But no, she was designed to convince the politicians that the U.S. Navy could do the nuclear strike mission, and they did not need to rely entirely on the Air Force.
It's also a force projection thing.
Like, that was a secondary role. Yes, that was a secondary role as well, which was basically, if a United States-style carrier shows up, you go, oh, the US has nukes right there, and that is a threat. That is a, projection.
Even without nukes, she would be she's a force projection ship.
Well, no, that's just a carrier generally.
But she was a significantly more powerful in terms of force projection than the other ships considered at the time, which is the Midways.
Well, yes.
Considering how much more potent the United States actually is compared to a Midway, she is even more effective one there. She is over 20,000 tons increased displacement over a Midway.
Well, yeah, absolutely. She points the way towards supercarriers. She points the way towards the first supercarriers, the Forestals.
The Forestals are supercarriers.
They are. They're over 60,000 tons. They're super carriers.
That's not what defines a super carrier, though. Cyclic has been over this with you multiple times. So has Clark.
In this case, I think he's wrong, and they're both wrong.
But if it's over 60,000,
They need to make designation for them, and they're not super carriers. They're carriers.
Then what are the first super carriers then?
you're probably looking at what's it called? Either Enterprise or Kitty Hawks, or potentially even just the Nimitz.
I'm sorry. So no. I'm sorry. Then if you're going to make that argument, I'm going to turn around and slap you across the face and say dumb, because there's no difference in displacement between the Kitty Hawks and the Forestals.
But role and intention does differ.
They are a bloody large flight deck to carry aircraft. That is all they fucking are. And you're sitting there telling me, Fleet, you can't have the Forestals be a supercarrier because, reasons.
Good show of your age, but...
Yeah.
There's no difference. There's no bloody difference between them. The Kitty Hawks are slightly newer and have better tech, but in terms of size, displacement, what sort of air group they can carry, it's...
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at it and I'm thinking... How are the Forestals not supercarriers? They're big enough that they deserve to be called that. How are they not supercarriers when the Kitty Hawks are? I'm looking at the difference in specs and it doesn't seem to be enough. Like, the Forestals are enough of a jump from the Midways that I'd say, yeah, absolutely.
The Kitty Hawks were designated supercarriers anachronistically because of the Nimitz. And because the Nimitz take most of their design cues off the Kitty Hawks.
Which the Kitty Hawks then took their design cues from the Forestals, which were the first carriers designed from the keel up with an angled flight deck and catapults, which...
No.
The first carriers designed and built with an...
Forrestal was just built as a straight deck, if I remember correctly.
let me have a look.
Don't think so actually on that one.
Remember,
They were going to have a straight deck, but I don't think they were built with that.
but the difference literally...
Yeah, so Forrestal and Saratoga... Yeah, I was right. Forrestal and Saratoga were rebuilt during construction to have angled decks. They were never at sea with a straight deck.
At that point, then, I'm actually tempted to concede, because if they were not designed from the keel up as angled flight deck carriers, that would be a good argument to make against them being the first super carriers. Because they were not designed from the keel up and built from the keel up as angled flight deck catabar carriers. Whereas the Kitty Hawks were. That's the distinction. That's a distinction I'll accept. But otherwise, I would also say that if the Forestals aren't the first super carriers, can we retroactively class them as such, though? Given their very similar role? Or would you just say they're the largest traditional aircraft carriers ever built?
Yeah. I think the best way to put it is, the Forestals are the last of the old style of carriers. The Kitty Hawks are the first of the super carriers. Because they're the first one that get that distinction.
Yeah.
Like, I would agree that definitely there's an argument that could be made for classing Forestals as super carriers, which is why there's debate over it.
I think the best way to go about it is to say the Forestals have the potential to be the first true super carriers, but if you want to make it clear cut, it's the Kitty Hawks. That would be what I would go with.
So essentially, the Forestals are the semi-dreadnought equivalent.
I'm not. I
on.
don't know about that
Before
one.
first comment is made.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. And nothing, and we went round and round and didn't actually fix the idea of whether the Forest was an aircraft carrier or a super carrier.
This is not uncommon.
Meaning that this will come up again, probably. Do you think that without the angled flight deck, it made operating jet aircraft in the 50s even more difficult? Because hang on a minute, didn't we answer
You
that
skipped
last...
question 9.
No, we answered that last week. And I know we answered that last week because we had a spirited debate about it.
You had a similar question.
Nope.
But not that question.
Because last week it was props from Angled Flight Deck, wasn't it?
No, and also I'm more going off question 9. There was a similar yet different one.
No, this is the same.
Yes.
If you go back up, I'm fairly
It's
certain.
not because it's not because I've literally just checked the actual document.
What's the
and
difference?
That's what I'm now trying to find the actual question in particular. There's no matches are coming up to that question.
Because we may have try using the back half. Try using.
Yeah, no, it's none of it was because last time it was mentioning a particular vehicle.
Yeah, but I think we did cover that part of. We did cover that last week. It wasn't the exact question asked, but we did. But
it was literally because it came down to that there is a single new test vehicle that is a technology demonstrator of a US wheeled self-propelled artillery vehicle. And you would make the argument that yes, this is going to show why they're going to this, and most people disagreed quite vehemently because it's a technology demonstrator.
Again, I would say there was also a thing about we settled on the idea that wheeled SPGs are much
There's probably
better.
going to be new ones of both.
Wheeled SPGs are better on the defensive.
Yeah, what it was thoughts on the US moving from the tracked self-propelled
and
to wheeled.
And then we went wildly off.
Does the cancellation of the tracked ERCA reduce the capability of the US field artillery?
Yeah, and then we went wildly off course and basically answered that question. And the answer was, to sum up,
Hello, Yuki.
Tracked SPGs.
Use something a bit more potent than ibuprofen. Use something like cocodamol.
Tracked SPGs are useful on the offensive, and wheeled SPGs are useful for general purpose and everything else.
Get some.
TV. Horses for courses. They do different jobs.
We have also figured out that there's no official plan for the U.S.
There is no act.
And we don't know which artillery corps they're trying to replace.
Yeah.
We have also mentioned it's possible they're trying to get rid of
their grand total of one technology demonstrator.
Yeah. Do you think that with that angled flight deck, it made operating jet aircraft in the 50s even more difficult because of their speed in both takeoff and landing? Also, the difficulty to move around and start jet engines on the deck. No. Yeah, but I'm also going to be very quick and say no. The reason you get angled flight decks is to increase sortie rates. It's not that operating jet aircraft is difficult, it's that it's inefficient. Do not confuse inefficiency with difficulty.
It's less inefficient, more just there's a larger gain of efficiency.
Yeah.
It's a next step forward, in essence.
Yeah.
And plus the fact that, by that time, jet aircrafts are actually getting big.
Yeah, that as well.
Because early jets are not too much bigger than propeller aircraft at the time.
Yeah. If the British were building a design A150 Super Yamato class, or an equivalent that's basically the same ship but British in terms of armour, in terms of primary armament, size, and speed, how much thinner would the armour be? You would have to basically do the design calculations for that ship and look at what British armour manufacturers were producing at the time, and I do not have that information to hand.
Maximum 15-inch
Well, the question,
belt.
probably max 15-inch belt inclined at maybe 15 to 20 degrees. Do you think, Fox?
That is not enough armor.
It's what you're going to be able to produce reasonably.
Like, to be fair, when we're getting to ship of that scale, nothing's going to be that well armored.
Yeah. If you're trying to protect yourself against 21-inch guns,
20-inch guns.
Yeah,
close enough to do it, but like,
the point is
500, 510, 20.1, sorry, but you're not defending against that.
The point is, your model armor can't stop her own guns.
Only a turret faces can.
No, it can't.
No, can't.
It was proven post-war they couldn't
Really? Fuck me.
Right, you have to remember
because the plate was, as Dr. Clark actually I think described on Monday, the plate inside was still partially molten, so it massively weakened the actual capability of that armor.
Yeah, we're literally getting to the point where casting that thickness of armor is not it's not possible, mostly because it's just the steel inside is still too molten to harden and form.
You can harden it fully, you just can't do it reliably at that tech level yet.
Something like that.
Which is why when we talked about it, you would end up with a situation of several armor belts, which has its own issues.
But yeah, we've answered that question before, so next.
Mm-hmm. So, where was I? Thoughts on the Commencement Bay class CVEs? Do you think it's better than others Navy CVEs like the Ruler class, and why they have such a relatively short service? Do you think they're better off as a stand-in helicopter carrier or amphibious landing ship in the 50s until dedicated LPH or LHAs enter service in the 1960s? Basically put, they are the best CVEs ever built. They were the biggest, they were the fastest, they were the most heavily armed. They were basically the final evolution of the CVE, the World War II CVE as a concept.
Mm-hmm.
That the Americans, that basically anyone produced. They are as close to a light fleet carrier in terms of dimensions as you can get. Sorry, a full light carrier like the Cleveland rebuilds, as you can get without actually being a light carrier. The problem is, though, when they enter service, they come too late. They come too late, and post-war, 19 knots just. It's not enough.
I mean,
they're like
they're like
call them
Saipans. Came too late.
Right, when did these ones actually arrive? Built 43,
Like
45. They were in service in 44. No, they were perfectly fine then.
No,
yeah.
no,
they
were good.
They're not there for. Yeah, they're not there for anti-submarine escort or anything. They've pretty much been relegated to land-based support. That's what the Taffy's for.
And they're good. And they're good at that. And no one's denying that. Problem is, though, they are. The problem is,
yes, post-war, it's not a good choice.
I wonder. Yeah.
The issue is you're in an environment that has the light fleet carriers in.
And also, to be fair, if the US wants a light aircraft carrier, they have the Independences and the Saipans, which can actually do 30 plus knots. Why do they need?
That's basically.
Why do they need a 19-knot ship that can carry less aircraft? Why?
Pretty much what.
Well, the reason why is because the naval contracts are still active, and we were trying to desperately get out of them, but we're not allowed to.
No, I know. But I was talking in terms of figuratively. There's a reason why they basically.
Well, in fact, USS Rabble was literally just sent to the reserves after being launched. Same with USS Tyann.
Exactly. Yeah, this is what I mean. That's what I said. Yeah, this is the whole thing. The US doesn't
interestingly enough, USS Paolo, which was launched after, actually was commissioned into the fleet.
There must have been a reason for her to serve.
Money.
But yeah. I guess there is no...
she was, by the looks of it, she was primarily used as a training ship.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Like, don't forget, another thing is there's 49 Consumer Bay class. There is physically no reason for the USN to maintain 49 of those.
Only 19 Commencement Bay class were finished.
Yeah.
There was 35 planned, 19 built.
Okay.
I'd say that makes sense at the time, but you would not but you use them for very limited stuff post-war. So
it's honestly.
I wouldn't honestly. Also, comparing them to the Ruler class is not really fair because the Ruler class
really
is
isn't.
an incredibly minor modification of just a USCB.
Yeah, the Rulers were the British versions of the Bogues, and in fact, there's nothing wrong with the Bogues and the Rulers. They're good ships, but The commencement bays are just a
There's a
step
reason
up.
they.
The commencement
because
bay.
they are designed from scratch as a carrier instead of take an oiler, put a runway on.
Well, to be fair, so were the attackers. It's important to bear in mind.
Well, yeah, I'm saying the commensurate bay is the only class I think that's designed from ground
No,
up
no,
as a carrier.
no. The commencement bays were based on the T3 tanker.
Yes, the hull is based on the T3 oiler, but
Yeah, but the Bogues are also
the
based on.
Bogues. Well, no, the Bogues were taking existing T3s and putting a runway on it.
It's
Yeah,
the
a good number of them were literally conversions instead of
Yeah, it's
purpose
the
built.
yeah. Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
where some of the
They were
issues
designed
with
from the
plan
ground
come
up.
from.
Right.
It's where some of the issues with plan come from. Is the fact that to a quite a significant degree they were built to civilian standards, which is why they start to come apart at the seams.
There you go, Wellesley.
But yeah,
Yeah, just they're not going to be used for amphibious landing ships or anything like that. They're too small and just. Yeah,
Knight, will
too
you
slow.
let that go,
Hmm?
please?
What's
I-
he talking about now?
The Tycho's legacy will not be forever stained by a Ranair 655. That's like saying that. That's like you can't.
No, it probably will be.
No, why
But
would
it's also deemed a minor thing.
I would also point out that you don't
It's
stain.
It will be a mark on their record.
No, it won't be. You don't
Forever,
state.
it
No,
will
it's,
be.
it's a mark on the crew of that ship, and that ship in particular. But it's not a mark on the class themselves, given.
But it
that-
will be held against the class or by
will be.
the
No, it
public.
won't be. It only
It's-
doesn't
only
mean
idiots
it-
would do that.
No, it doesn't really matter. Tychos are going away anyway.
Yeah.
But even
Yeah.
so, that's
Like-
not how. Like, if that's how opinion works,
People will
good
see it
God,
as a
let
mark
me-
on the class.
But that's
But
not how
also,
things.
people will go, we don't really care.
Yeah, because Fleet, here's the thing. The biggest mark against the F111, F117 is the fact that Serbians got lucky and shot one down. That's a massive mark.
The biggest mark
By the
against
fact that also
the biggest
it
mark
wasn't
against
a failure
Concord.
of the aircraft, it was a failure of complacency in the Air Force itself.
I mean, I
The
will
biggest
point
mark
out that
against
I
Concord
don't.
wasn't Concord's fault. It's because the French couldn't actually bother to sweep their runways.
Again, as I'm going.
Incredibly
to,
minor things
Yes, I'm
will
aware.
mark an entire class.
I'm
but
aware,
also it's a
but
case of
that shouldn't
not
be
a
the
big
that
thing in-
shouldn't be the case. That is not.
You
a
were the one
correct way
earlier
to
saying that
think.
just because things shouldn't be does not mean they are.
That's true, but I still stand by my point. That should
You
be
literally
the case.
were telling me in Foxo otherwise earlier.
Yes, but the difference is that well.
No. Please, there's no difference there, I'm afraid. That's just being hypocritical. Like, again though, does it really matter?
Yeah, it's like your typical question. Does
No.
that mean the sinking of Sheffield staying the Type 42 class forever?
To a degree, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. And honestly, that's
That
probably
one,
a worse
yes.
example.
Knight, those flaws were then fixed. Those flaws in the Aegis system were
Yes.
fixed, and the Tychos
mean,
became excellent vessels.
Yeah, but people will still hold it against them.
And to be fair, yeah, people will hold it against the Tychos, but to be fair, the
I
entire
agree,
problem
it
comes
was,
from
but-
the Aegis system, which.
But
should
if
be
you
the one
remember,
that's
Yuki,
taking most of the flack.
Most nations use that as an excuse. Both Britain and France used that as an excuse to end Concord.
They were
even
looking
though
for. They
it
were
was
looking.
mostly-
They were looking for an excuse anyway. It
But
cost
it
a
is-
bloody
yeah,
arm and
but
a leg
it's
to
used-
run.
Actually,
Yeah, I wonder why.
they were still entirely profitable. Like literally, until they were finally ended, they were making profit year after year.
Not at first. It took a little bit of. It took a very funny.
No.
It took a funny incident for them to make profit. Which was when.
Yeah.
Which was when someone asked.
I'm referring
one
to
of the
their
cust-
end.
I know, but it is a chance to talk about the funny haha businessmen don't book their own flights moment. I don't know. My secretary just charges it. What do you think What do you think we charge you? This number. Oh my god, that's so much more than we actually charge them. Charge them that. Oh dear.
But yeah, so what we're just saying is, while it probably doesn't matter much, but no matter what, people will always hold things against them. It doesn't matter much, But it will be a black mark on their record.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
But again, it doesn't really matter.
It
I
really
suppose,
doesn't
yeah, there is
matter.
that.
Titles are going away anyway, and the Aegis system has been basically.
I mean,
Most of
my
it is
objection
just
to it is just the objection to this whole principle of things marking things just because certain things happen when it's the whole concept is silly. But that's just my objection. I'm aware that the reality of the world is that's the way it is, but I'm just making the objection out of principle. Just like you were making the objection out of principle earlier, and you were entirely right to
Which
say
is why
so.
I'm calling you hypocritical.
I'm not calling
You were hypocritical in the first
Next.
within 20 minutes.
Eh,
But yes,
well, yeah.
next question, Fleet.
Next.
Moving on.
We have a lot of questions to go through.
Actually, we're running out of them now. There's only like 2 pages more.
When will Ramblings follow the Brutus meta and have full video and audio on multiple platforms?
When Clark gets more money and adds Fleet to his restream thing.
Yes, because I
Is
can't.
it something Clark has actually said?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's fully going to happen because I suspect Fleet will protest.
And it will
Yes,
also
it's
have to,
still
and
not
it
gonna
will
be
also
able
have
to
to
handle
wait, and it will also have to wait for my steam-powered shitbox to be retired.
Your
Yeah,
potato.
probably yes.
But it's more the case that
Which I'm glad to tell you, Fleet. Work on that has commenced.
Oh, this is the chat.
Having did not
This is the chat I can't see.
Yes.
tell
Which
him
I have been explicitly
the
told.
special project is going well.
Yeah, which I have been
going
explicitly told. No, we can't invite you. We have been not given that permission, so don't even ask.
Okay. So that's that. 1 second. I'm just.
But don't worry, it's going to be cool. My link with the
You're trying to find what on earth those are.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I think I actually know what. Oh no, I actually know what these are just by their designation.
Okay, so that's that.
CA. CA
wait, are
9
these
9 203mm guns.
Oh, these
Well,
are the
there's
Spanish.
8-1, and
These
the
are
other's
the.
the 12 6-inch. Yeah.
Why are Spanish looking at the El Salvador designs for various heavy and light cruisers? Simple, because the Spanish want to regenerate their fleet both prior to, during, and after the Spanish Civil War. We see the first steps of that with the rebuilds of their light cruisers, the acquisition of the Canarias class, and the plans to buy a new set of battleships to replace the Hispanias. Whether that would end up be a design built domestically that is somewhat smaller, or the more likely option would have been buying a Littorio from a new build Littorio or two from Italian yards.
I found like one image that someone sort of did as a mock of what one of the 9-gun might have looked like. Sort of thing.
Admiral. Admiral DeFeo, medium battleship.
And apparently this is an image of the 12 6-inch gun one.
Yeah.
Of the from the actual original stuff.
It's about a series of small battleship designs with its main guns at midships.
I don't think anyone said medium battleship, but
that's what I'm.
Because you then have also got the 12 8-inch gun one, which is actually quite an interesting
Admiral
one.
DeFeo's medium battleship was supposed to be a sort of similar-sized counter to the Richelieu's until to the Dunkirk's.
Ooh.
Admiral DeFeo's. Apparently, I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not Italian.
Italian.
Benicio de Feo. I am probably butchering that, but oh well.
Look, we're British.
We're British, we do this.
It's our job to butcher foreign pronunciation. We didn't conquer half the world to speak their language. Sorry, correction.
English was made the universal language.
Yeah, sorry, correction.
Actually,
We did.
it.
Yeah, sorry, correction.
Frankly,
Wait, Foxo, my joke.
Word we picked from India.
Oh no, I'm aware.
All
Oh
friends.
no, I'm
Our
aware.
language
I'm
is an
aware.
amalgamation.
I'm aware. But to finish to
Da-da-da.
finish my joke, we didn't conquer, enslave, brutally oppress half the world, to speak their language.
I honestly can't find much on him. Apart from
I know,
basically-
we actually did, but the joke doesn't
Apparently he
land.
invented a particular type of gyroscope, and then was sanctioned for causing massive fascism, and declared he was one of the main reasons the Italians declared war, as such was sanctioned against.
What? Man develops rangefinder, gets slammed for being fascist.
No,
How dare
He
you?
no. He developed a rangefinder, and he also supported the rise of fascism in Italy and
Oh.
supported Mussolini's policies.
Oh God, that's
You
brutal.
don't understand.
Which he
You don't
a
understand.
lot of this he made possible via his own personal votes and individual actions, including propaganda, which he himself did to the Senate. Apparently, he also was one of the main as uncle of Ugo Tibero. He supported his research into the naval development of Italian naval radar systems.
Wait. Dragon,
Mm.
are you telling me that this Italian fascist finds a third way to
Oh,
find the range?
wait a moment! I know what this is actually referring to. I think.
Literally, you see
And
that,
you're
you see
gonna
that
hate
guy?
it.
You see that guy? That guy over there? Fuck that guy. That guy in particular, yeah. Fuck that guy. I love it when
so,
Ramblings just gets this insane.
World of Warships
Fuck that.
actually decided to make use of one of his designs. Say hello to the Michelangelo.
What in the name of sweet Tom fuckery am I looking at?
All of her main guns were put in the middle of the ship.
Oh yeah, that.
And those
Why?
are 320mm main guns
Same
with
as the
quad
ones.
6-inch.
Same as the
fore and
ones. You just stop, please, World of Warships, before I slap you across the face.
This was a historical thing, Fleet.
Despite the fact I am an armchair admiral, I'm still going to slap them for this.
Oh yes, also
Go for it.
people complained about that, by the way, in the forums.
What?
Not you in particular, complained that I should clarify. Not you in particular. A number of people in the forums are, oh well, would these armchair admirals stop complaining about how the game needs more realistic ships? They should. World of Warships should just stop bothering making new ships and fix their game. It's like, oh no.
That's pretty typical.
Yeah.
It's just like how
Yuki,
we all like
no,
to bash
go to
guys.
Gulag.
Moving on. Moving
We are
on.
not. Yuki's asking for missile ships in World of Warships.
Dragon, please tell me you have
Go to
part
Gulag.
1 of that next question, because
No.
I don't
What do you mean part 1?
I don't
Oh,
understand.
no, that is... Which one? What, the YouTube one?
Yeah, I don't understand. What
That is part
that?
1.
I don't understand the question.
That is 1 and 2. Right, basically, due to the character limit system, I normally just eliminate where it says...
Yeah, no, but
Both-
even if that is the whole question, I still don't. I
Would it
don't.
be right to
don't
think
know
an
why-
undeclined British
I'm-
Empire would fit the Computer-Assisted Action Information
What?
System, or
No,
CAAIS?
not that one. You've missed
No,
two
not that one.
questions.
Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, sorry, that's where things were... Which one? As far as the Alfredo Frondic frigate would be a larger and improved Maestrale class frigate. What might be the Italians go for? A larger Maestrale frigate or a... Yeah, no, that is part 1 and 2.
Who's asking this question?
And
That's a night one.
I don't
Why are
understand.
you calling them frigates? They're destroyers. Why are you calling them frigates?
Also, Timu, to be fair, in general, if you talk about me missing questions, you've
Yeah.
got no right to stand. And I would need to go back to them.
Hey, at least I'm not a
Yeah,
hypocrite.
no, that is 1 and 2.
Also, Dragon, I'm going to throw Yuki a bone, and
No.
she gets to pick what train she gets to go to. She gets the free, all expenses paid vacation to Siberia on, and
No.
she can pick its colours.
No. No. Admiral, the Alfredo Orini class destroyer. Let's see if that brings up something. 'Cause I looked for the frigate and it just
Yeah.
didn't bring up anything.
No, it's not a frigate. It's a destroyer. It's a World War II destroyer. So's the Maelstrom.
Oh.
It's literally the next class.
Oh. The.
And based on what I'm seeing, it is literally high. It's about the same thing, but I'm a little bit bigger now.
What was the? So if basically the question is, if this is this, what would the Italians go for? So if the destroyer they go for, so if I'm reading this question right, if the destroyer the Italians go for is the destroyer the Italians go for, will the destroyer the Italians go for be the destroyer the Italians go for? I think. Which,
Yes.
doesn't that question just answer itself?
It's not much of a question and more of a statement.
I I'm not missing something, right? I want to make sure I'm not missing something here.
I don't know who
Right,
asked the
guys.
question, but yeah.
I know you're in the chat. Can you please rephrase this question?
Because I don't want to not answer it, but I don't. I'm trying to think, and I can't see it.
It makes it, I don't know. The question is written in a way that actually makes no sense.
Good, it's not just me going mad. Then I thought my last marble had rotted away.
It's just like, yes,
Well,
the Irani
well,
destroyers is the next class after the Maelstrom, which is just a Maelstrom but slightly bigger. So, what do you mean by what might the Italians go for? It's just like, are you asking what comes after the Irani? Because that thing exists.
Yes. Why? So, Discord, question 14. Why did the Royal Navy emphasize more on inline engines for their carrier aircraft instead of the radials early in the war? Since radial aircraft are easy to operate on carriers, and in some cases are easy to land because of the view of the cockpit. Well, except the Corsair. I think it was just, honestly, I don't think the Royal Navy was emphasizing inline engines. I mean, look at the Royal Navy's operational aircraft in the early war. The Rock, the Skewer, the Swordfish.
It's not even that, please. It's a case of the Royal Navy kept going to Rolls-Royce and going, can you make an aerial? Rolls-Royce was going, hee, inline so burr.
And also,
Well,
it's
also
even
part of it.
It's also easy. It's also even easier than that. The Royal Navy. We will take whatever engines you can give us, shove them in a fucking airframe, and build it. That's it.
Well,
I mean, yeah, and also you assume the Royal Navy has any ability to influence its own production when the RAF is literally sucking everything.
Actually, no, that's interesting. Because
Well,
a lot of the
big-
work for the Merlin engine starts in the mid-1930s. And it was paid for by the Royal Navy until the RAF takes interest in it around 1938.
And then nicks off with everything. The
No.
bloody thieving
Okay.
bastards.
Don't forget, one of the big things about aircraft engine development is that there is a relatively large fork in the road in development. The European countries were very, very
Both.
focused on developing inline liquid-cooled engine in the 30s, in the mid to late 30s. That's why you have all the Spitfire 109 Hurricane, all of those aircrafts are liquid-cooled engine based. Radio engine development in Europe kind of lagged behind a bit, mostly because why? We have an inline liquid cooled engine that provides better aerodynamics, and it's something we have, and that is honestly that puts the Royal Navy in a situation where, yeah, the next generation engine we're going to put on an aircraft is going to have to be inline engines because
That's what they got.
were first utilized in Royal Navy the Fleet Air Arms aircraft.
Yes. Yes.
Often. And that was the experience the Royal Flying Corps, where they repeatedly got burned by radials being shaved. And it wasn't the fault of the radials of the concept, it was just the radials they were using. But the Royal Navy and the RAF very quickly get this idea that radials are bad for aircraft.
Uh-huh.
You can make the argument about whether they are or they aren't, but both the RAF and the RN doesn't want radial engines.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Because you get stuff like the Blackburn float planes. That
It's nothing
the radial engine in those develop leaks and it pulls in the bottom of the engine bay and starts fires when the engine.
It's nothing compared to what
Then
Britain.
again, that was a Blackburn thing.
Yeah,
And
it's
honestly, you can.
it's.
Honest,
Can I do my joke, please?
can blame the.
I've been.
You can do that too, yeah.
I'm sitting on.
And I mean, fundamentally, the other big problem is just generally the fact that radial engines will infinitely be bigger than inline engines in order to generate similar kind of power to thrust ratios. And it is something that probably European countries, and to be fair, the Fleet Air Arm is probably not too interested in either. A Hellcat or a Corsair is infinitely bigger than whatever, the local Fleet Air Arm aircraft could, procure. They're forced to use them because they're just generally, they function better at the time. But you can see the Fleet Air Arms was very much willing to throw those things out as soon as they can, whenever, their own domestic designs.
Yeah, when the Seafire comes in, the Corsairs get thrown off the fucking ship.
Yeah. Because a Seafire is infinitely smaller than a Corsair.
Mm-hmm.
You could fit more Seafire onto a Implacable than a Corsair can. You can a Corsair. Now, of course, there's obviously some performance differences, but that's here or there. That doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Right. Moving. Oh. No, never mind. I can't do my.
What's wrong?
It's fine. It's fine.
What?
It's fine. It's fine. I
Mm-hmm.
ran out of steam and the joke won't land now. Never mind. It's fine. It wasn't a big deal anyway. Would it be right to think a non-declined British Empire would fit computer-assisted action information systems and action data automated weapon systems into their supercarriers? There's no reason why a Commonwealth, the Commonwealth Navy wouldn't be one of the finest in the world with the best technology. If the British Empire is if the United Commonwealth is competing on the same peer level as the United States and the Soviet Union, there is no reason why their vessels would not be peers to their rivals. If whoever was asking this question was to make a Shipgirl cosplay, should they make it an Enterprise 1071
Wellesley.
cosplay, Wellesley,
Was it?
Iron Duke cosplay, or HMS Dreadnought cosplay? Honestly,
They're doing HMS Iron Duke, I believe.
well, there you are. Like I say, you've literally answered. You've literally done what I was going to tell you to do. Don't let us choose for you. Choose for yourself.
In my opinion, you should have 2 turrets, 1 arm, 2 turrets, the other, and have your 5th centerline turret on your back. Would be my opinion. For a proper Iron Duke god, because you've got the one turret to mid, 2 turrets fore, 2 turrets aft.
Because we had this chat in the campfire
Yeah.
after.
I need to find a way to add 99 pence to this order.
Order a sauce.
That's literally what I'm looking at currently.
I can't make the joke I was going to make on this server.
Then don't.
Alright, let's
So-
take a look. What's the next
come on, please.
Okay, so the next
Snella,
question.
Snella.
Did the USN emphasize more on climb
this
rate
is
and aerial
fun.
performance instead of range of flight duration with the F-8F Bearcat, since it could only do interception missions near and around the aircraft carrier rather than escorting strike packages? I don't think that's.
Yes.
To be blunt, I'm just looking. Yeah. The thing is, the Hellcat is basically, it's a just pure. The F-6F Hellcat is a workhorse. The F-8F Bearcat is a aerial dominance platform. It is designed to totally and completely obliterate any opposing aircraft that the United States Navy knows about or is expecting to fight. And do so handily. It is overkill for
fundamentally,
It is overkill for 95% of the Axis aircraft extant in 1945 when it's introduced.
so the big thing about the Bearcat is it has one mission profile: stop kamikazes. It doesn't even matter what you're trying to throw in at the Bearcat. It doesn't care about performance or anything. Its role is to get up to 10,000 feet, get behind the kamikazes, shoot them all fucking down.
Yep.
Simple as that. It's a point defense fighter.
And it's a fucking good one.
Kamikaze, and from the American experiences, the Med, isn't it? With stuff like
Yeah, the F8.
X.
The F8. Yeah, the F8. Yeah, the need for the F8F comes out of experiences in the Mediterranean, but mainly in the Pacific theater of operations. And it was from the need for a very high performance, quick to climb, point defense fighter to take over that sort of duty from things like the F6F, which not only would free up the F6F for more general combat operations, which it is better at, but also give them a far more capable platform for the carrier air defense role. This, of course, didn't hurt them when they were asked to go after and poke kamikazes.
Well, that is a part of the mission profiles.
Well,
It's
that
not
was
anything that comes at the plate.
Yes.
So you know.
So we answered that one. Why did the USN keep the Corsair around until the 1950s, even as a casse or attacker aircraft, even though they had poor landing performance on the carriers? They're transitioning to the Sky Raiders completely. Simple. They're there. We have lots of them. They're there.
That's the thing. It's bold to call it. The poor landing performance on a carrier for a Corsair is mostly issues that stem from early war in 1940 and 1941. By post-war, Corsairs is you could land a Corsair on a carrier as well as any other carrier aircraft. In terms of why they didn't transition to Sky Raiders, Corsairs. I mean, you have existing airframe of Corsairs. Why spend money to buy more Sky Raiders if they could do the exactly same thing? This is post-war America where they don't want to spend more money and then they have to.
Yeah, it's like we have a fuck ton of Corsairs. Let's use the Corsairs while we've got the part stocks for them to blow shit up on the ground. And then when they go away, we can gradually... And it also means we can gradually phase in our extremely capable strike platform without breaking the bank. The extremely capable strike platform being Sky Raider.
And more importantly, the Corsair is still more than capable fighters in the 40s and early 50s.
It's like, I'm sorry,
most other countries is still flying props.
Yes, the only ones that aren't are the Soviet Union and the British. You don't.
And to be fair, there are plenty of engagements where Corsairs went ahead and actually fought MiG-15s and shot them down.
I don't care. You're faster than me. You die anyway. Very quickly, Knight has reworded question 148 as an Alfredo Orani frigate would be a larger or improved... I think he means a frigate based on the Maestrale hull, so if they weren't building a destroyer, they're building a frigate. What might the Italians go for? A bigger hull or the same hull with new weapons and systems? If they're not building a follow-on destroyer, and instead they're building a follow-on frigate...
That would be a very good frigate.
It would basically... You're talking about basically creating a destroyer escort many years early in terms of concept. You'd probably sacrifice speed for a more reliable steam plant and more fuel. You'd probably lose a torpedo mount for another twin 4-inch mount. You would probably gain a couple more 20 mils. And you would probably get obviously more depth charges as well. And then you've got a very good destroyer escort for convoys to and from Africa. It can blow.
I actually question about decreasing the speed because you're not operating Atlantic, you're operating the mid.
It's not so much for. I'm not talking about a stupid reduction in speed. It's just that your straight line speed will now no longer be. And I'm just going to look up what their speed is. Your straight line speed will now no longer be 33 knots. It might instead be 30 knots. So you give up a lot because I'm sure when you get past 30 knots, the horsepower you need massively goes up. So you wouldn't do 33 knots. You do 30, but that frees up a ton of weight. And if you don't use it for range, you can use it for other things like more armament, better protection. You could actually protect the ships. You give them some basic splinter protection. Like, you don't need 33 knots in a destroyer escort. It's just not required. Don't think I've missed anything, have I?
Well, thank you, Knight, for actually pointing out the fact that you're trying to talk about the Cold War frigate. Not the World War II destroyer.
So... Is that a Cold War frigate? Did the Italians have
that? Is a Cold... Yeah, that's a Cold War frigate. It's just that the class after that is not the Orani class. That's why we're all confused.
Okay. Let me see
It
what this
states
is. Let me
it's
see
a
what this
generic
is.
3,000 ton. Let's see.
Can you? Here we go. The Mistrali class frigate. If they build, so basically, if they build a successor to that, what will they go with? Given that two of them are still active and we haven't. We've seen what. Well, the Italians are buying Frem. Honestly, to be blunt, to be really
Just
blunt
like,
about it,
why would you not buy Frem?
like, Frem is the answer. But if they were going to replace the problem you've got is by the time the Mistralis are coming in the early 80s, you're entering the period where warships you aren't looking to replace them for at least 20 years,
20
if not
years.
longer.
So if we're looking for a
there
replacement in
it's
the early 2000s, let's say.
in the early 2000s. Wait a minute, hang on.
If you're
Oh,
looking for a replacement,
It's
in the early
Frem! It's
2000s,
Frem! It's
yeah,
literally
it's still
Frem!
Frem.
It's still Frem!
Frem's gonna work by the time, so yeah.
Yeah, it's still Frem. Like, this is the thing. When you get to post 1980, you start looking at time frames for procurement and replacement that radically shift compared to pre 1980. It is almost black and white in terms of the differences.
And
It's
problem is,
it's bizarre.
if you're gonna try to force the issue by saying Italy's going to build their own domestic thing, we're going to end up eventually talking about the next hull with pretty much the exact same capability as a Frem. So don't even try to force us to, build a brand new design, because it will fundamentally just become Frem.
This is the problem with modern procurement. You end up
Yes.
leaning towards a lot of the same solutions to the problems. Because, well, there's only so many ways you can build a modern multi-purpose frigate. As the US found out when they tried and went, we're just fucking buy Frem. Just fucking buy a version of Frem. It does what we need to do. Just fucking buy Frem and we'll build it ourselves.
Buy Frem and then completely remodify it, but yes, it's
Yeah,
still fundamentally a Frem.
Yes,
Anyway.
yes! It is the spirit of the Vickers salesman revived in the form of the Frem salesman!
You call it that.
Oh, the grandson of oh, Kilobin's here.
Guess what? The only other choice from Frem is probably like the Type 26, but
Hey, Kilobin's
that's
here.
much later.
I mean, if we're talking late Cold War, the alternative is Type 23.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Type 23 batch 2?
The problem you've got is at that point that that is, I mean, 20 years is basically the absolute earliest if you want to just if you feel you need an urgent replacement.
But fundamentally, this is Italy. They're always broke.
Yes.
Well, and also the fact that in the 80s, Italy doesn't go through a conflict that costs them hulls.
Yeah.
And where's our older hull?
Ah, at the bottom of the Atlantic.
Well, I mean, also you've got like you've got the last of the counties
Yeah.
still kicking around, and like they need replacing.
Yeah.
The newer Type 42s, the ones that are lost, need replacing.
Yeah.
Type 21s are getting to the point where they need to be replacing. So the Brits at that point have
The need for a frigate.
more of a desire to get a modern frigate under construction. And even then, what Type 23 was originally supposed to be is not what was built. Because it gets all the Falklands lessons incorporated.
Yeah.
So it goes from basically a basic Type 21 anti-submarine replacement into a true general-purpose frigate. With still more of a lean to anti-submarine warfare.
Even then, by the time you're looking at at Type 23 being around, that's still only 5 years into the service life of the last of the what they called Moe. The
Misrose.
yeah. So at that point, even then, that's just way too early to consider replacement.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, while this is the era of the beginning of the multinational programs, there's still a lot of industrial nationalism and patriotism involved.
Yeah.
So while the French and Italians are both building FREMs, they still are using. They still want to maintain their own domestic industries.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which is the big issue the Americans are having with their take on FREM, is they're trying to significantly adapt an existing design to fit their systems. And as attractive as it is, particularly to Treasury officials, to adopt an off-the-shelf design, the moment you start fiddling with it, those costs go through the roof.
Yep.
So,
Constellation class.
The Mistrals were fine for what they were, and the Frems make sense as well. It doesn't become one of the most successful frigate projects in the late / post Cold War era if it was a bad design.
Yep.
It's like when people go like, oh, this one design would have been so much better. It's like, oh, if the Americans had deployed, I don't know, T-23 with a regular transmission, it's like, they built 50,000 Shermans for a reason. Because it worked. And it's like, you build a bunch of Frems because they work.
Oh man, the original founder for Rooster Teeth's buying it back. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, Rooster Teeth has returned. Who knows if it'll be any decent or not.
He said try and bring it back to its roots, and we'll see how it goes. Anyway, moving on.
So, yes, I see we have fellow Mart enjoyers. Good. Very good.
Yes.
This is going to be insane, but I'll ask everyone know why it's stupid. Assume the USN looks at the 11 new, already obsolete Virginias and Connecticuts and looks for useful conversions. Could you convert them to, say, assault transports, pulling out the secondary and tertiary guns and magazines? Could you get, say, a battalion on such a ship? So we're talking about the Virginia and Connecticut class battleships. The last pre-dreadnought.
Talking the pre-dreads.
Yeah, the last two classes of pre-dreadnought that the U.S. Navy actually ordered. I am aware that there are the Mississippi class, but bear in mind the Mississippi class were built on speculation and were bought by the United States.
No, there's no point in keeping them.
No.
In terms of personnel, how many they could carry, well, we know that the Wicks and Clemson class destroyers that were converted into fast transports could carry, what, 100 men? For short, sort of like island-to-island movements, and could carry a pair of landing craft to deploy those troops. But, I mean, why just build a cargo ship? It's just going to be...
Yeah, does not seem worth it in my opinion.
I would also point out, if we're talking about them when the Virginias and Connecticuts are new, I'm sorry, but until about 1914, they, along with the other pre-dreadnoughts built post-1902, are the US battle fleet. Until you get Texas and New York, you do not have enough dreadnoughts to be a credible naval power without the US pre-dreadnought fleet. Until Texas and New York... Sorry, go on. Killer.
No, I mean, you're right in the sense that a lot of people forget that it's basically into World War One when the nations actually have a dozen or so dreadnoughts in service. Like, the Germans don't decommission their pre-dreadnoughts until after Jutland. The Russian ones serve actually with distinction in the Black Sea. They fight off Gerben.
And of course, there's the meme of Slava just going, I don't care that you're two of Germany's most powerful dreadnought battleships. I'm still going to beat the ever-living snot out of you.
Yeah,
with just slapping two Koenigs from beyond the range they can reply.
so the pre-dreads remain useful up until about 1916 in terms of actual naval combat. The reason that the general sentiment is that they're immediately obsolete the moment Dreadnought is built is A, partially British propaganda,
Yeah.
and the fact that the Brits are able to hit the ground running and just start churning out dreadnoughts.
Mm-hmm. And
But-
so are the
but even
Germans. But even those
but
two
even-
powers.
Maintain their pre-dreadnoughts into World War One.
Like, you don't
Like-
see the pre-dreadnoughts leave the Grand Fleet until the Iron Dukes come in. And even then, they're hovering around, and just in case, until the Revengers come in and the Royal Navy goes, okay, now we're safe. And also,
and then they
they're useful.
get redeployed to defend the Channel.
And also, they're
Very
useful.
useful.
It's like, so you know how we're concentrated against Germany? Yeah. And we know some other powers have dreadnought battleships? Yeah. So what do we do if the Argentinians get uppy? We'll just send 8 pre-dreadnoughts down, it's fine. That's complete overkill against the any of the South American dreadnoughts, even if they all come out together. It's still
I think
8
that's just
battleships.
fine.
It's still 8 battleships to... Like, this is the thing. It's just, there are so many... Like, for a lot of the major navies, pre-dreadnoughts become riskable capital assets. You see the French and the
Yes.
British use them in the Mediterranean. The Americans would have likely done the same had the war gone on, or there been a Mediterranean theatre to deploy American assets to. When the dreadnought arrives in numbers, the pre-dreadnought becomes a riskable asset, and that makes them incredibly valuable.
Yes. About the only sort of major deployment of a pre-dreadnought that you could see that wasn't was the use of one for the Zeebrugge raid.
Yeah.
Like, you could legitimately see the option of a Majestic being used for Zeebrugge.
Exactly.
You think about it. 2 North Nielsen's basically told Gobin, you're not allowed to go anywhere.
Well, but the Russians played it smart. They knew that individually their
Back in
ships
a
weren't
tick.
capable of fighting Goeben, so they kept the pre-dreadnoughts together. The pre-dreadnoughts shot accurately and rapidly, and so together were able to keep Goeben at arm's length.
Yeah.
Granted, you've also on the other side got the Germans not really wanting to force the issue, because if Goeben's out of action, there's nothing stopping the Russian Black Sea Fleet being a lot more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't. Yeah, as per the question, until you start getting the second or third generation of US dreadnoughts into service, since they're being built in 2s and 3s, there's no. It doesn't make sense to decommission the pre-dreadnoughts until then.
If you think most of the U.S. pre-dreadnoughts wasn't even decommissioned until after the Washington Naval Treaty.
Yeah, exactly, because the US
Yeah.
doesn't have. Well, up until the Washington Naval Treaty, there's no reason to get rid of them legally,
there
because
isn't.
because the US Navy at that point had secured the funding for a complete replacement of them with brand new South Dakota, Colorado, and Lexington class ships.
Yeah.
It's only when there becomes a legal reason that they can't keep them that they go. And it's the same thing with the US dreadnoughts in the 1940s.
Mhm.
The plans weren't to retire the Californias and such until the 1950s.
Because here's the thing. Your latest and greatest capital assets must be preserved. But, as we see during the Second World War, your second generation assets become your riskable assets. The Congos for the Japanese, the standard battleships for the United States, the Revengers for the British, and for the Italians, the Cavors,
Yeah,
and the Dulios.
yeah, and the French are using their World War I dreadnoughts as best as they can. Granted,
Mhm.
the Marine Nationale in World War II just doesn't have a lot of time to do something. But is it Bretagne or Corbeil that fires in support of French troops near the Channel?
I forget.
What it's one of the it's like when they go like, oh, the French battleships never did anything. It's like, no, they were firing in support of French forces. Like German reports near it in sort of June of 1940 are like, don't get like, if you're near the coast, be careful, because the Marine Nationale and the Royal Navy are there in force and will start shooting at you.
Mm-hmm.
Because isn't one of them lost to Stuka attack?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar. I don't know.
I want to say one of them was attacked by Stukas while firing in support of French forces.
What's next?
So As an Admiral class Eagle style carrier conversion would be 866 feet long. 860 feet 10 inches long, 127 feet 2-inch beam, and a 29 foot 10 inch draft deep load, a displacement of 36,513,000 to 42,540 tons, and probably 80 to 90 planes in 33 knots if one of them was classed as an experimental. How much problems does that make for the US and Japan? Virtually none that they don't already have,
No.
to be honest. You've not drastically changed the balance of power.
If the Brits have one big carrier, the Americans sit with their 2 Lexingtons. If the Brits actively get rid of Eagle and Argus and Hermes and put all of their carrier tonnage into 2 Admiral class conversions, then you possibly see the Navy putting up a greater fight to maintain control of naval aircraft.
If you've got...
Because the Navy can have 2 carriers which, in theory, can put almost 200 1920s era aircraft in the air.
The thing is that this is in relation to a question that's been asked 3 weeks on the bounce regarding having an Admiral class as an experimental classification and having that alongside either 2 Courageouses and Furious or just the Admiral and 2 Courageouses. And in that scenario, you've not really changed the game. The Americans, the Americans are sat there with the 2 Lexingtons going, this is fine.
TT.
The Japanese are sat there with a Kagi and Karga going, this is fine.
TT.
Yeah, the Brits have the option that they have, in theory, for the time, a fleet carrier capable vessel more available more of the time because they have 3 ships to everyone else's 2.
Yeah.
So they can practice 3 carrier operations. They can have a carrier out east, so they can start learning more about how an aircraft carrier operates in the tropical conditions. It's more likely that you see more pilots from Australia and New Zealand in the interwar period potentially have more carrier experience.
Mm-hmm.
If the idea is essentially to base a carrier out east in Singapore and draw its air group from the Royal Australian and Royal New Zealand flying corps.
Mm.
To there might also fundamentally be a slight change in fleet aircraft designs.
Yeah.
If you're operating something that big.
Yeah.
It depends on the size of the hangars. On the size of the elevators specifically.
Yeah.
Because the big problem that the Brits have, especially in the war, is that the pre-war carriers can't carry Seafire. Especially the early ones that don't fold their wings. Except Furious, which had T-shaped elevators. So it could actually accommodate a Seafire's wingspan. When not folding. If you have you're essentially asking the Royal Navy to have enough foresight to design an Admiral carrier around basically the dimensions of an Avenger. Which in 1924 is a massive what-if, because the Avenger is huge.
Yeah, it's
like a Magus aircraft.
The Admiral rebuild will likely have a lot of scope for growth, but don't expect it to be aggressively future-proofed.
To be fair, they might actually have to throw it into refit in the 30s.
Oh yeah, 100%. A carrier, when the Royal Navy secures funding for, let's say, this world's Ark Royal, a modern twin hangar deck 1930s fast carrier, that I think is once that design is finalized, I wouldn't be surprised if you see lessons learned in that design process being applied to a ship that is legitimately twice the size.
Kilobin,
Yes.
I just had a thought. You know how people say if Hood survived and then Vanguard is commissioned, they would have been quasi-half-sisters?
In terms of visuals, they would be. And in capability, sort of.
I think we're looking at another situation in this case, with Ark Royal and this hybrid.
I will also point... One actual advantage of this would be also you're not getting 1, as Dr. Clark said, you're getting 3.
Where are you, Dragon?
Well, you know how I was meant to be ordering food?
Yes.
You're not
Well, that ended up being expensive, so instead I was told, right, no, we're dropping you off at Tesco, now good luck.
Have
And
fun
admittedly,
with
I've now got, like, I now got 6 days of food for the price of one. So hey, sheesh,
Hey,
bloody hell.
Ramble.
Sorry,
we've reached
I
the
almost
new-
just got sorry, I just almost got murdered because of a zebra crossing.
Yeah, we've reached, gentlemen. We've reached the new milestone. Ramblings now live from Tesco.
No, I've left there now. Why do you think my mind's reading? But no, one thing that might actually be interesting here, though, is that since you've now got 3 of these characters, you've got 3 carriers,
The problem,
probably.
I know that's what
The
the
thing is,
block.
this lets Supermarine have fun.
I-
Because even in the 20s, yes, I agree, the Avengers are too big of an aircraft. But this does let Supermarine and the others actually have their fun big designs. So you can potentially see some larger planes come earlier.
Okay, I will sort of flip this on because gunnery officer asked the question, or not asked the question, stated the fact. He believes the Lexingtons, specifically, I'm going to go with Saratoga, are the best of the best of the interwar conversions.
Honestly,
Saratoga or Akagi.
honestly, to be perfectly blunt with you, given how the Lexingtons come out compared to a lot of the other rebuilds of the time, they don't have the triple deck arrangement. They have a fully enclosed bow. They have an exceptionally roomy hangar. I'm really sorry to say, but I think Drac is. They are. The Lexingtons are just leagues ahead.
I think you could give an argument for Furious, but on average, I would tend to agree.
I agree. As coming out of the shipyards in their first iteration, the Lexingtons are the best because they are the closest to what we consider a conventional carrier.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when Akagi and Karg actually get their second conversion,
Yeah.
they're also up there at rate.
Yeah.
They're up there, but Kaga has it rough.
Yeah. She has problems. That ship. Right. As the first year of no new London Naval treaties and 10 years of a new non-treaty construction scenario, so presumably he's saying either first London. So basically there is no first London. So the treaties die in the 1930s, and after 10 years of no new construction, the first things to be replaced would be the Iron Dukes and Tiger, then the Revengers. What do you think the RM might try for, and will it be 16.5-inch guns? The RN already, the RN already
16A.
Yeah, the RN already has a pair of 16-inch gunships in the fleet. They have experience operating 16-inch guns. It's become the fleet's new biggest caliber, so any follow-ons at first, if everyone else will likely be doing the same, the Royal Navy will also go, for this first generation of ships, it'll be 16s.
And the Brits
I'm going to raise for Go on.
worked at the design anyway, the conventional Nelson.
Yeah.
Now, I will throw a slight spanner in the works, because I do mostly agree with you. Actually, I don't. They probably keep Tiger around longer than any of the others. But also, I think you could see an argument for them not actually sticking with 16s. They're not going to 16.5 either, though. They're going back to 15. So the 15-inch 45 and the 15-inch 50 have the same capability as the 16-inch at this point in time.
You will also have a very unified,
The thing that you've got
logistic
is that
chain
the 15-inch 45 and the other 15-inch guns they're working on at the time are. If you look at the Royal Navy's documentation for the end of the building holiday, and yes, this was battleships that were supposed to be built within the Washington Treaty limits, they're not thinking about 15s. They're thinking about 16s.
Yes, they are. We've got numerous designs of this period using the 15-inch 45 and 50.
That's true.
But the design that they go with, in the sense of that, the one that is presented at the Treasury, of that, if construction is to resume, this is what we're going to build, it's a 16. Because they know that the Americans are going to stick at 16, and they know the Japanese are going to want to stick at 16.
And also in future, especially if this is a world where the treaties are just lapsing entirely, with no renewal or renegotiation, ships will not stay at 16-inch for long.
Because the British either have to have the biggest guns in the world, or at least equal.
Hang on, I'm
Like-
slightly confused. Having no London Naval Treaty doesn't stop Washington continuing, right?
No, it says it basically says no London Naval Treaty. Because thing is, there has to be there was a thing in Washington that says there has to be a renegotiation. It's the reason there was a renegotiation. Either the treaty is renegotiated and extended, or it lapses. And that's why First London happens. If there's no negotiations, there is no London Naval Treaty.
And you probably get a G3 that's been updated by about 6 years.
Yeah, with and that,
Again, I'm not sure you get G3. You get a G3 similar, but you get the third turret position to the aft again.
yeah.
Because at this point, they're no longer worried about the weight saving. So
yeah, you're probably
the
right.
extended citadel isn't more effective.
So, voila, Iowa. You get British Iowa in 1934.
Yes, and suddenly
like
the
that.
entire world is back to a qualitative arms race, and the Japanese are sobbing into their hands.
Don't know. They might actually qualitative. They might have some hope in hell. Quantitative, they've got no chance.
Japan
if
would
there's-
be the one
if-
that's
if
going
there's-
batshit insane with their.
And if there's no treaties
designs.
limiting naval development, its chances are that the Royal Navy has to by default get a bit more funding, which, as Richelieu points out, might mean that the Nelson 16's shell issue based on the incorrect trials data from Baden,
Is corrected
you might
earlier.
see the proposed corrections to the 16-inch guns resolved, which means which means that the British 16 isn't a slight improvement over the British 15, but a more comprehensive improvement.
And at that point, they're just going to adopt it.
Potentially, yes. As I still would argue for a potential 15-inch 45 be on their standards, but probably have battle cruisers stick with the 15s and battleships go with the 16s.
The problem is,
Because they can overall get more efficiency out of the 15s on the battle cruisers.
I think we'd have.
Remember, apart from G3, almost all the battle cruisers, and apart from the 18s as well, we're looking at 15s.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you would have to have a full. Like, I personally, from my perspective, I would like to have for a question like this to really flesh it out beyond the basics we're discussing here. I think I'd like Dr. Clark and Drac, and possibly some others as well.
Oh, I would love Clark is here for this, because this one actually is a very interesting one.
Yeah. Question.
Because I don't think your idea is bad either.
Yeah.
It's a difference in doctrine.
Yeah. Question for any of the panel who may have played Star
Wars: The Old Republic.
Star Wars: The Old Republic, SWOTOR.
Yeah.
I have, yes.
And if so, what is your favorite faction to play as? I have never played it. I have no cat in this race or dog in this fight.
The character I mained for the longest time was a Republic commander because my guy looked like a clone trooper and had a minigun.
Daka.
Never played it, but I would have to agree with Killiman because also from the actual cutscenes we see of that guy, who your main character is based off, he is awesome.
Yeah, my character had his armor.
Like he literally he's basically being force choked by, I think it's actually Malgus. He pulls out a grenade and detonates it in their face.
Yeah, he gets into a fist fight with Malgus in the trailer. Yeah, so next question.
The next question is, what was the thought process on the CATTB Abrams? Do you think a 140mm gun would definitely fail? And if it's the 130mm gun instead, and would some this is English. This question is very much English territory.
Okay.
I'm gonna read it verbatim and you'll see what I mean. Do you think the 140mm gun would definitely fail if it's the 130mm gun instead, and would somehow work and enter service on the Abrams? That is the question read verbatim.
So CAT-TB is literally what it said. It's a technical test bed.
Yeah.
It was, we have a bunch of ideas. We're going to put them onto one chassis and figure out what it does, and then it gets the nickname Thumper, I think.
Yes.
Because the 140 has a hell of a muzzle fit signature. But
And-
but the Abrams, like, it works. The armor the developments that the armor developments that are tested on it go into A2, I think.
Yeah.
The gun is known to be functional. I don't think its performance was like a huge leap over the 120, but it was also a case of you're dealing with first generation, essentially pre-development 140mm ammunition, which is just the 120 dart, but with a bit more propellant behind it.
Mhm.
I don't think they developed like a true dart in proportion to the increased gun. They just used the same dart as the 120.
Well,
Because
if they tried, it's going to be
Yeah.
a hell of a round to put into gun breach.
well, that's why it was an autoloader.
Yeah.
And because the Abrams has like two or three different autoloader concepts that, in theory, the US can deploy to Abrams.
I think this testbed's the one where it's a turret or a crewless turret, isn't it?
Again,
It's
it's
the one
it's
where
the-
they took the T-14 arrangement where all three of them sit in front
Yes.
of the hull.
But the turret is still mana bull.
Yeah, it's man of bull.
Is
which why it's so
that a
big.
bowl full of mana?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll
So-
see myself out.
So,
I mean,
would the 140 fail? Probably not, because we know the Soviets were looking at 152mm gun tank,
Yeah.
and NATO wasn't afraid of having a smaller gun than the Warsaw Pact.
They just wanted one that was
However-
of similar effectiveness to whatever the Russians
Exactly.
were fielding.
So if the Soviets suddenly start deploying Object 95, Black Eagle, I think, or whatever it was called,
yeah.
or the nickname, then you're probably more likely to see the 130 enter NATO service more widespread, because that was the gun that was more tested in the Leopard 2. But we know from German, Swiss, and French test programs that the Leclerc and the Leopard 2, with suitable modifications, can handle 140mm guns.
I mean,
So-
generally, there's also the fundamental issue of if they use those guns.
Yeah, and so if the Soviets are deploying what looks like a super tank with a 6-inch gun, advanced armor, contact 5, advanced composites, then yes, you can definitely see NATO nations either going with a 140 or a 130.
Maybe. I still think that they are probably gonna go for a L-55 with enhanced ammunition, because that's generally what I think the U.S. Army would actually do instead of going for a new gun. They
But
always
then
go
again-
for upgraded ammunition before they go for a new gun.
Yeah.
But the US Army has never gone to the 55.
Because they went with improved ammunition first. They always go
Yeah.
with that first. The other European countries might go for L-55 to stick with NATO
Yes.
standard ammunition, but
And Richelieu is right. Like, even today, there is continued development of NATO 120mm ammunition, and while the 130 and the 140 is being tossed around now in the new sort of Leopard and Leclerc replacement offerings, like KF-51 and the Leo Leclerc hybrid that I
Yeah.
can't remember what it's called.
It's basically down to the fact that how do we defeat either the new generation of armor and the more advanced active protection systems? Well, simply put, you fire a bigger round with more energy that requires more energy to stop. Simply put.
Yeah, I mean, APS has yet to fully prove that it can defeat kinetic penetration.
Oh no, I'm aware. It's
Mhm.
more just, it's more the armor side. The APS is less of a problem.
Yeah, and also the fact that in recent years there's been more evidence of what we thought Soviet armor was capable of versus what it's actually capable of. So the impetus to go straight to a bigger gun is lessened, particularly with regards to Soviet and Soviet-derived vehicles. Whether the Chinese armored development is still hindered by its origins in Soviet practices remains to be seen.
it's generally questionable in terms of whether if they're going to field anything heavier, considering their potential future war. It's going to be something they're going to have to ship to places.
Also typical, yes, while there is a Challenger 3 tech demonstration with a
130.
130, the only reason that it's on a Challenger is because Rheinmetall had a Challenger hull
Lying around.
lying around, basically. Like, that just because everyone thought, oh my god, the Brits are gonna like spend a bunch of money with 130mm gun tanks. It's like, no,
No. A,
no, we're not.
expensive. Expensive. B, 120 Rheinmetall is right there.
Yes.
But no, it's hard to say that the ZTZs are a better series than the T80s.
Yeah, like we're talking modern tanks here, and I'm gonna be
I mean-
real. I'm gonna be real with you. Until they actually shoot at things and get shot at by things, their capabilities are in serious up in
We
the air.
I mean, we now have proven combat records of Leopard 2, Abrams, and Challenger 2.
Along with proven combat records from the T80s,
90,
yeah,
late 72s.
yeah, T90
So,
as well. But ZTZ has not been proven in combat.
No. And what we've learned from what happens to the NATO tanks is, generally speaking, they're hard to beat in actual tank combat, and most of the losses have been credited to hitting mines or getting droned.
And
then
if
artillery.
and if they get hit, the crew climbs out and goes and gets
Yes.
another tank.
Yes. The challenges in particular have been renowned for their ability to keep their crews alive and their ability to make soup.
Gunnery officer.
Yes.
I'm just gonna read this aloud and then say why it's stupid. Replacing a gun from the 50s with a gun from the 1970s to 80s is a massive improvement indeed. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of the way tank guns and weapons development generally has proceeded over the course of the late 20th century. It's important to bear in mind that a Rheinmetall 120mm gun from the present era, although it may look very similar externally to the gun developed in the 1970s, is a radically different piece of kit.
Yeah.
The same way
and
that
L30's a 1980s gun.
yeah, the same way that just because there's TOW 1, TOW 2, and now we're working on TOW 3, they are actually not similar missiles at all. The US is just going through the designations as more improvements are made to their main vehicle-based and land-based anti-armor missile platform that is not Javelin.
There's also a very fundamental issue with tank guns. They are very basic. You could stuff a tank gun from the 1950s operate in the same exact way as a gun from the 70s, 80s, or even nowadays.
I mean, like, to quote the Chieftain with regards to US gun development in World War II and the divergence between the 76 and the 90mm, we're essentially at that point again with metallurgy, in the sense that metallurgy means you can either make a 120 gun today that's as good as the L44 or the M256 or the L30. You can make a gun that has the same performance characteristics of those sorts of weapons
But much more cheaply.
at a lighter weight, or for the same weight as those guns from the 70s and 80s, you can make a 130
This is the thing.
or a 140 probably these days. And so the question is like, do you? And so for certain vehicles, say like the M10 Booker, right now it's using a 105, which is fundamentally, in terms of its design, the same gun that equipped Centurions in the mid-50s.
And things like M60. But
And Abrams.
But if you lift
And
the hood, and look underneath what the gun actually is, you'll find a radically different beast than what came before. But at the end of the day, it's still a 105mm gun. There's only so much you can do with that platform to differentiate it. So you will get people who say, "Oh, it's the same gun." It's not the same gun.
It's basically the same gun.
But the point I'm making is that it's an overly simplified view of the way development has gone, which isn't
It's just-
accurate and should be discouraged from being spread.
I think it's technically
the L-
speaking like I think I heard it described as like L7A8.
Yeah. Thank you, Richelieu. Nuance matters.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because gun is
It's-
gun. Gun is there to detonate powder.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, isn't the big thing with the L7 more modern iterations is the fact it's much lighter than it once
Yes.
was?
Yeah, because
Oh.
metallurgy.
And and the
And recoil improvements in recoil systems.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and of course, and they've also actually realised that a lot of the guns now are low pressure, so you can get an equivalent power out of an L7 nowadays with a low pressure charge that you used to have a full pressure charge and be mounted on an MBT to get.
And then more importantly, darts are getting longer.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and so you have ammunition like M900, which is a ammunition type developed in response to NATO getting their hands on late 1980s model T-72s and shooting at them, and discovering, to their horror, that standard L7 armed vehicles like Leopard 1, like M60, like the Centurions that still made up a large amount of NATO sort of second line reserve armor, couldn't kill them from the front.
Yeah, that had a shocking effect, didn't it?
Yeah, which led to the development of M900.
To be fair, technically, you could stuff an M900 into, old Centurion, and you could probably fire it.
It would fire for about 5 shots, and then you'd have absolutely rinsed the recoil system.
This is the thing. M900 is being used very usefully, because I know the Ukrainians aren't using their 105 armed tanks in a direct tank on tank role. I think they're more reserved for. Well, to be fair,
as far as we know, the Leopard 1s and the M55s are being deployed essentially as assault guns.
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me with their
They're providing immediate on-call large caliber fire support to mechanized infantry units. The Leopard 2s and Abrams in the units that they are equipped to are more general purpose main battle tanks.
and the Challengers seem to be the ultimate version of the assault gun and fire support platform.
Not necessarily. From what we understand, they've mainly been used in high intensity defensive engagements, which is exactly what Charlie 2 was designed to do.
And do it very well.
Sit, hold down, and pick off Russian armor at distance, aiming for command tanks.
You're dead, you're dead, you're dead, you're particularly dead, you're even deader than the bloke in front of you, and you're even deader than the bloke behind you.
Which is why the photos that circulated of a Challenger 2 that has suffered a detonation to remove the turret are of it in a hold-down position in a tree line.
Didn't they have to fire a tactical ballistic missile at the thing to blow its turret clean off?
As far as I can understand, the vehicle took a direct laser-guided 152mm shell to the turret.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That is one of the few things I can think of that would actually, even if it doesn't penetrate, has the shock value to set off the ammunition within the turret. Just the shock of that explosion, even if it doesn't penetrate.
However, also, the Challenger 2 has had... The crews love them, and the unit loved it. The unit that got the 12, and I think they've had a couple more sent over as replacements in the interim. They love the vehicle for its capabilities. However, it's really bloody heavy.
Yeah, that's the one thing they don't like about it.
Which means, Ukraine, it's a lot of farmland. The roads in a lot of parts of the hinterlands between the cities aren't metalled roads, and you wouldn't even want to drive a Charlie 2 down a metal road for very long.
Congratulations, you no longer have a road.
No, gunnery officer.
So they have had issues with recovering them.
Yeah, this is the thing. Gunnery officer, it's not. No, the thing is, the Challenger 2 is exceptionally mobile. It's one of the faster MBTs. But
it's more mobile than Leclerc, that's for sure.
For its weight class,
yes,
it's fast.
But here's the thing. Speed is not the same as pure mobility. The Challenger has a problem when it comes to cross-country performance in certain weather conditions and on certain types of ground, shall we say.
Basically, recently rained or defrosted farmland is not... Which is why... If you see footage of the tanks fighting in Ukraine, where are they? They're on the roads.
Or they're near the roads.
It's why you see footage of Ukrainian tanks driving up a road and running into BMPs and just shooting at them. Because the terrain, people like, because Ukraine is considered, due to World War II, to be perfect tank country. Wide open fields that you can drive around easily. And then if you actually say read the reports, it's like sure, when it's -20 outside, you can drive off the road. When it's baking hot in the middle of summer,
You can drive off the road.
Any spring and autumn, you are on the roads.
If the Germans have issue with their Panzer III and IV
Yeah, exactly.
in mud,
Exactly. Like Codder's posting a photo of a Challenger 2. That's at the Canadian training grounds that we use.
oh
That tank's disappeared.
And,
And I just
yep.
love the fact that
Derek!
that's
Yep.
the most. That is the most junior man of the crew being told to dig it out.
Yes. Derek, yes. The tank's stuck, yes. See that shovel over there? Yep. Go outside. Don't make me shovel the tank out, Derek.
I remember seeing something like that.
And so you got to remember that, and obviously, like that Challenger 2 is on a training ground in Canada, where there's no rush to get it out. But if you're a Ukrainian tank unit,
There is much rush.
yes,
Because
Spiteful,
doesn't that...
it's a more comprehensive rebuild than just an engine swap. It's a transmission swap as well.
Yeah, doesn't
The
that...
Ukrainians got pre-upgraded Charlie 2s.
Doesn't it also come with certain other... Like, yes, it solves some problems, but creates other ones. That power pack upgrade.
Essentially, so they figured out that you have to be much more careful with it, because at high speeds it will just try and rip the track.
Whereas, honestly, given what the Ukrainians are using it for and how few they have, not sending that power pack seems like a good idea. Because at least then they can drive the tank, in a combat environment without having to constantly think, is my tank going to rip its tracks off?
Apparently, one of the big causes for it slipping its track up with the new engines is stuff like its auto-attack track tensioning system.
Yes, because I don't think as I understand, they didn't think they needed to change it because there's only a 300 horsepower difference. Turns out,
Only 300. Did someone really just say the line when it comes to tanks? Only 300 horsepower?
well,
Not
they
you. I'm
figured
more
because,
talking in
because,
terms of...
because the tank is so heavy. It was determined that it would improve overall mobility, but not in a sort of like. Well, I mean, it is coming with a new transmission, and it is coming, and the Charlie 3s are coming with upgraded suspension. But I don't believe that the track tensioning system was part of that upgrade program because at the time it was deemed that it wasn't needed.
Ay, ay, ay.
It has been added to it because the British Army really likes that. It massively
Yes.
reduces turnaround.
Ay,
But I
ay,
mean,
ay.
but all of the NATO spec tanks that have been provided to Ukraine have proven their worth.
Uh-huh. Yep.
The funniest thing I find out about the unit that got the Challenger 2s, just because of its unit name, it
I
generated
know.
some very. It was the 12th Air Assault Brigade, which led to this image of a Challenger 2 being pushed out the back of Mirror.
Oh, dear. I mean, it gets better. I mean, the funniest thing is, the Ukrainians are sat there going, so, in terms of Russian tanks, we also did pretty well, because we are the place that can build T-80. Sorry, not T-80, T-64.
No,
And-
they build 80s as well.
Well, and in that case, then, they just sat there with the best Russian tanks.
Easiest way to explain Ukrainian/Russian tank development is that Ukraine got the Kharkiv tank plant, which is 64 and 80.
Do we know if they restart...
Russia
Sorry, go on.
Russia got got the T-72 factory, but
They got
obviously-
Ural.
Yeah, but obviously the Russians know what goes into a T-80, so you take a 72, give it some of the 80 upgrades, and that's 90.
Yeah. What I would just like to say, I know the Ukrainians for many years threw around a bunch of upgrade packages for their T-64s and 80s, and also tried to create an export market for their tanks. Given all of that, and, the fact they're fighting a major war, have they restarted production of T-64 and 80 with the onset of the war? Do we know?
As far as we understand, they are not new producing 64 and 80. They are, I believe, they have mostly gone through their long-term reactivatable storage, of vehicles, but they are still repairing and restoring older vehicles still in service. We are aware that a limited number of T-84, which is sort of the Ukrainian domestic, what we've learnt from 80 and 64s, have been deployed, but we're talking a dozen, maybe 2 dozen. The T-84
By
is
deployed,
about
do
as
you
rare
mean? Do you
they
mean
have been
new built?
They have been. There was a couple built before the war.
Yep.
The Ukrainians claim that they have completed additional units since the war broke out.
It wouldn't surprise me if they're trying to get it
however-
working.
I, however, doubt that we are talking from like raw materials. I would suspect that when they say additional units have been completed since the outbreak of war, they are completing previously made components into new tanks. But even then, I would guess that the T-84 is probably the 3rd rarest tank in Ukraine.
Yeah.
If we assume about 20 have been built, it makes it less rare than Challenger 2 and T-14.
Yeah. Might I actually say that I think the version that if they go for it, if they try to build new T-84s, I think we can all agree it's going to be T-84 180. Sorry, T-84 120 with the Rheinmetall 120. Because that then simplifies...
With the fact that Rheinmetall is pushing for a factory to be opened in Ukraine, if the war goes Ukraine's favour, I don't think they build T-84 120. They start building KF-51.
KF-51? You mean...
Rheinmetall is working to open up an armoured vehicle factory in Ukraine.
Oh, the new Panther.
Yes, Panther 3. Well, they don't want to call it Panther 3, but everyone's calling it Panther 3.
Yeah, this is the thing. When you call something Panther, we're going to call it Panther 3. I'm sorry, this is what happens.
It's like Japan. It's like Germany. Japan has literally built a new cargo.
But it's
you
fine.
Are allowed. We are in the point of breaking out all the old names.
Yeah, like honestly, Germany, it's fine. Like we have seen your unwillingness to go back to militarization, dude. It's fine. We forgive you. None of the people who are alive now were the people who made you do bad things. We forgive you as a nation. It's fine. You can bring back a little bit of that militarism. We could do with it right now.
It's Bundeswehr actually going to adopt KF-51?
No, they're building Leopard 2A8.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Ukraine might though.
Yes. The funniest thing about KF-51 is its development hing because it is not derived from Leopard 2. It is derived from the armoured vehicle recovery variant of Leopard 2 that they've then turned back into a tank.
Oh, that's an interesting way to go about it.
Yeah.
Funny.
But it's because it's like licensing and rights and stuff. Honestly, I think the next properly new US tank, not just M1A whatever, needs to be called the Ike.
Honestly, yeah.
You need to call it the Eisenhower.
Yeah, Patton's had his day in the sun. And if they call it the MacArthur, I'm going to slap whoever came up with that name.
I don't think anyone's going to call it the tank.
Let's be real. A modern tank for the modern age. Why rename them after these old relics? Name them after the bloke that did Desert Storm 1.
Oh, yeah, honestly, call it a Schwarzkopf. Yeah, that's a fantastic name.
The problem with Schwarzkopf is that it is not an American-sounding enough name.
McVester.
You say Schwarzkopf and people will think of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Even so, that's still...
Yeah.
Honestly, that's even funnier. That's even funnier, because if the official name is the Schwarzkopf, the troops are going to call it the Schwarzenegger, and that will be hilarious.
which is why I think if it comes up to it, the next big US Army vehicle will be the Eisenhower.
Eisenhower.
Oh.
It is a safe name. He's a respected president.
And is a respected general.
Yep. Commanders. He was the first commander of NATO.
Yeah.
Theatre of Operations.
Yes,
yeah.
He led NATO before NATO was a thing.
Yeah. The storm in Norman. Yeah.
So
Next question. Wow, we really went off on a tangent there, didn't we? It's not called Ramblings for nothing. Next question. Is it reasonable to call Billy Mitchell Bully Mitchell? On the one hand, he was... Yeah, honestly. Oh, sorry, it says Bully Mitchell. I feel that's a little bit over... I mean, just call him what he is. An arrogant arse who went around official regulations and put people's lives in danger to get his bite of sound and his moment in the press. That is a... Like, you don't need to call him names.
Pretty much every proponent of air power in the 1920s?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you'd have to call him names. Let's not sink down to that level, but just call him what he is. Someone who endangered the lives of actual real people who were trying to partake in his test to try and help him prove his point fairly because he couldn't be bothered to wait for them to actually examine the ship.
ABC. Pointing out the joke I was making does not make it funny, okay?
So...
Next.
Also been there. It's actually quite a nice place, Chipping Norton.
If the carrier air wings of the 1930s had developed into fighter and scout dive torpedo bombers, i.e. like the RN had, would that make USN carrier ops easier or harder? The problem with that is that you have to artificially force the same restrictions and the same environment that the Royal Navy had, which is the Fleet Air Arm under the control of the RAF.
I mean, arguably, the US air groups going into World War II are fine. There's no, like, people rag on the Devastator because they get jumped at Midway because they've lost their fighter escort. But
Or the fact that their torpedoes don't work.
yeah, but that's no fault of the aircraft.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happened, and like, you also compare that to what happens to the Cape formations.
Yeah.
Everyone's into World War II carrier torpedo bomber is insanely vulnerable to fighters.
Because this is the thing that everyone forgets. Everyone goes, swordfish outdated. I go, the swordfish's peer opponents are the Kate and the Devastator, and everyone forgets this.
Here's the thing.
Younger than the Spitfire.
I think we're misreading the question. I think his question is, what if we combine the dive bomber torpedo and the scout bomber into a single plane?
Like the
with
swordfishes were, basically, for the Royal Navy.
For the U.S. Navy. So basically, instead of having Dauntless and Devastators and stuff like that, they
you're more likely to see some sort of Devastator with dive brakes.
Yeah, which is gonna be
in
worse.
the 30s.
Aye.
I mean, to be fair, if you think about it, the U.S. Navy technically did go into it in the 40s.
I mean,
the
the thing.
Helldivers
I mean, the funny.
is both a dive bomber and
the
a torpedo bomber.
The funny thing is, if that's in the 30s, it takes an awful long time for what becomes the SBD to filter into U.S. service. A lot longer than people think.
It won't. No, the SBD won't be filtered in.
Well,
if they're trying to develop that in the 30s, they won't even have SBD.
Well, think about it. If you need a dive torpedo bomber, and
can you
your
get an
options,
SBD to carry a Mark 13?
Probably, yeah. I can't see any reason why not. If they can carry if they can carry 1,000-pound bombs as an airframe, and handle the stress of diving with that load.
It's not the fact that the plane can't handle. It's not just range. The SBD is not a very big plane.
No, it is weirdly small, actually.
I don't know if you could fit a Mark 13 on a Dauntless.
Then again...
Well, no, I'm not saying...
Isn't it?
I'm not saying the design would literally be a Dauntless. I'm saying the design you're more likely to see is some form of Dauntless that can carry a torpedo, rather than a Devastator that can dive bomb. Because it's far easier. It's far easier to have an aircraft that can dive bomb and carry a torpedo than it is to have a torpedo plane that does dive bombing badly. It is much.
the other way around.
I don't think a Dauntless could flying slow enough.
It's a case of
that looks more like a Devastator than a Dauntless.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to remember, Fleet, that you need a very, very specific center of mass to be a good torpedo bomber. And a lot of dive bombers didn't have the right center of mass for it.
The Dauntless. like it's going to look more like a Devastator, mostly simply because of the sheer fact that the wing profile on the Dauntless is going to mean that it's going to struggle to slow down to the point where you can deploy a torpedo.
Yeah. Will that make US carrier ops easier or harder? Probably harder.
It really depends on
You
just
run the risk
plane.
of having an aircraft that's compromised at both roles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is the
pretty
thing.
much.
But that's about the long and short of it.
Yeah.
Next
But on the other hand,
question.
you get a logistically nicer aircraft.
Yeah. So,
Like, if you think about it, the U.S. Navy took like so long getting the Helldiver correct to the point
Son
where
of a
it's
bitch, second class.
basically the damn thing didn't really
Work.
enter full.
oh my
full
god, it's a
production until, like,
Ju-88! Somebody hand me the machine gun!
yeah,
I mean, technically, yes, the Ju-88 is an aircraft that could both carry torpedoes and dive bomb.
It's also
Definitely.
insanely. I mean, it's an exceptionally. Let's not get me wrong. The Ju-88 is an exceptionally good aircraft, given everything
Yes.
it can do and the performance characteristics it has. But the problem with the Ju-88 is that it was expensive.
and it's not fitting on a carrier.
I
Yeah,
mean, the
so,
the closest you get is Mosquito, Sea Mosquito.
Yes.
yeah, literally.
Yes.
Because like a lot of the comparisons are, it's a German Mosquito.
Well, to be pedantic, the German Mosquito is the TA-154.
Yes.
Is
They
it?
literally call
That's
it
more of a Hornet equivalent, isn't it? With it being a high altitude fighter.
not.
Except,
well,
and the
it depends-
Mosquito was sort of a bomber that was pushed into the heavy fighter role.
So yes, so Mosquito, the origin of Mosquito is a bomber that doesn't need defensive armament because it's so fast. Once they had got the Air Ministry on board with that concept, de Havilland is already working on a day and night fighter. So it's less that they look at the Mosquito and go, this would be good in X. De Havilland is already thinking and acting on that concept right from the beginning, because if you've got a bomber that'll do 400 miles an hour in 1940, if you give it some guns, it's still going to do 380 miles an hour. Which, in 1940 is one of the fastest fighters in the world. But yeah,
It's just
so,
as fast as the B-38 Lightning, basically.
yeah, and it's a much bigger aircraft.
Yeah.
Because the P-30, like when you're looking at twin-engine multi-role aircraft, you have the Spectrum, and at one end is like the F5F, which is just smallest possible airframe, engines that we can strap to it that aren't going to tear the wings off, and we end up with an aircraft with an insanely good climb rate that can work off a carrier because it's tiny.
It's tiny.
At the other end, you have the HE-177 that is always trying to kill you.
Yes. And the only time it isn't trying to kill you is when you're trying to kill something else, and then it immediately goes back to trying to kill you.
And then like the P-38 is more F5F.
Yeah. The funniest thing is, the only version of the Heinkel 117 that doesn't try to kill you is the one with 4 separate engines. And you know who
Yes.
got that working? The French! After the war!
So you've got like F5F, P-38, and then in the middle you've got probably Mosquito, where it can be a reasonably effective heavy fighter. It can also be a effective medium bomber because the thing could carry cookies in its later versions.
Yes.
And then next to it on the bomber end of the spectrum is Ju-88, and it's like the 188 and the 288 and the 388 because they are bombers pushed into the fighter role because you've got a bomber blessed with good performance.
Yeah,
But when Junkers is designing the 88, they're not thinking of using it as a heavy fighter because that's what the BF-110's for.
Yeah, and then they go,
Whereas the closest competitor that the Mosquito has is the Bow fighter, which is brilliant.
But it's no Mosquito.
In terms of a multi-role twin-engined aircraft in Royal Air Force service, you've got Whirlwind, Beaufighter, Mosquito.
Whirlwind is more in the XF5F spectrum.
Yeah. The Twin Mustang is more sort of like the middle between Mosquito and F5F.
Yeah.
What do you call it? It's hard to
It's
call
like-
Twin Mustang and multi-role, but all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, yes.
I mean,
Um,
gun
I
pods.
feel
It
like-
did get gun pods.
I feel. I'm sorry
But
to.
when you need all the 50 cals,
I'm sorry to.
like, I think they got 22
Deploy the
50
Freedom
cals.
Laser.
Yeah, I'm sorry to move us on,
Gun
folks, but we
pods?
have we've really sort of flattened this question into the ground. So, next question: how much of a threat was the Miyoko with her 10 203mm guns, 6 120mm guns, 50 25mm AA guns at 4 depth charge rails, and Takao with her 10 203mm guns, 8 5-inch guns, and 52 25mm AA guns, 16 torpedoes, and 4 depth charge rails? Simply put, they're as much threat as a pair of modern heavy cruisers are. That is to say, they are a threat that requires serious attention, regardless of where they are, because they're a pair of modern large heavy cruisers.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Miyokos and the Takaos are like top of the line surface combatants.
They are the cream of the crop at the time. They are probably the most modern heavy cruisers you run into, other than
Bagami.
it's hard to call Mogami a heavy cruiser, but yeah, all
They
right.
are. By the time they've finished rebuilding them, they're heavy cruisers.
All right. But
The
they're
amount of
basically
the amount of extra steel they have to weld into them, they're heavy cruisers.
yeah, all right. But yeah, basically they are Japan's premier heavy cruiser force, and
Yeah,
it
so-
it is a force that you don't want to just willy-nilly throw some Pepsi Colas at it and pretend
Even-
that nothing.
Even
gonna be
if
fun.
even if it's just the pair of them, that's still a force that if it encounters a pair of light cruisers, it annihilates. If it encounters a squadron of destroyers, it will likely win that fight. This is the thing. If you
It's more
want,
a question of, it's like, it depends. Like the two ships require a serious, or at least an equal counter, but that equal counter can be a light cruiser. It's like if you're on a Takao class cruiser off the Solomon Islands at night in 1942.
oh yeah,
Do you really want to pick a fight with a Brooklyn?
yeah, that's a good point. That is an excellent point.
It's like yes, your guns and your torpedoes can end that fight in a single hit.
But
can he.
so can theirs at that range at night. And
Exactly.
and
Which
also-
is the engagements that these cruisers are fighting at. If
Yeah.
you say are looking at something in the Dutch East Indies where it's daylight,
you really want a pair of heavies, to be fair.
and
And ideally, if you want to be honest, to do overkill, as any decent navy would, you probably want a fast capital ship and a pair of light cruisers and a squadron of destroyers to guarantee that you win, they lose really hard, you don't lose so much.
Chasing
whereas
down the renowns, basically.
essentially the Japanese have the problem that the Western Allies have cruisers that have a significant enough advantage in volume of fire that they can bludgeon technically superior enemy vessels. Because a Boise or a Helena or a Cleveland doesn't necessarily have to sink a Takao, but it can shred its upper works to the point that the Takao becomes combat ineffective.
And at that point, it's, excuse me, escorting destroyer? Yes. You see that really battered Japanese heavy cruiser over there that's technically still afloat? Yep. I don't want to see it anymore. No problem, boss, you got it.
So you end up in those, like, yes, those cruisers are definitely dangerous combatants, and they prove themselves in combat.
It's basically, you
But
don't...
It's all contextual.
Yeah, and also, it's,
Yeah,
again,
it's very good Swiss Army knives.
Yeah, it's basically the standard thing of any naval combatant. You treat
you
it with the
fighting?
respect it deserves. You always assume it's more capable, or at least as capable as you think it is, if not more capable, and you bring, ideally, more force than you need.
Yeah, Royal Navy doctrine was 2-1.
So, next question.
Next question is very simply, if someone could please post that in the thing. I can't copy and paste it. I have tried.
It's a picture of a carrier.
So, your thoughts on this carrier? Honestly, it's a fairly decent,
Doesn't
It's a fairly decent.
There's no stats. The problem.
Honestly, from looking at it, as far as I'm concerned, it's a fairly decent, albeit small, Canobar carrier. That's where my immediate thoughts go in regards.
Pseudo Charles de Gaulle size.
Yeah, that to me screams early Catabar carrier, new build in the 60s.
Those elevators look awfully small, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Elevators are too small. Radar, main, presumably air search radar, being back from the superstructure on its own superstructure is a bit of a weird choice. I wouldn't have that gap. I just have the superstructure running that entire length and use that internal volume for something else. Rather than having a small gap that serves basically no purpose. If you're going to have that gap, it should serve a purpose. Elevators are too... Obviously, we don't know what type of aircraft it's operating, but for me, the elevators seem too small. 2 cats is not enough. You need at least 3. 1 running along the edge of the angled flight deck. 2 cats is not enough. You need a third.
The cats also need to be angled inwards.
Yes, that is also something they do need to do. The angled flight deck portion is absolutely fine. No problems with that at all. Looks to be a 4-shaft ship. That's fine, but I would say at that point you probably want a much bigger array of funnels to lift the smoke from whatever your boilers are. I don't think for a 4-shaft arrangement that size of smoke stack is enough. But of course,
you're trying to run a gas turbine.
Yeah, but again, we don't know. Obviously, it doesn't have any armament, but that could be doctrine. That could be that it's not been added yet. That could be any number of reasons. It's a good start, but it needs work before it's a finalized design. That's all I'm going to say.
Quite a lot. Because if the elevator size is correct, then this is a much bigger ship than we think it is, and it's that requires a very different amount of change.
YouTube question: why was the Miyoko class cruiser easier to scuttle than Takao? I don't know, actually. I don't know. I don't know. If they were easier to scuttle, it was probably a quirk of the design, I would suppose. Maybe the Takaos are just less easy to scuttle. I guess. Sea Donners, what am I looking at? What is that? What is that? The dancing cat? What the?
The only thing I can think of, the Takao I think is naturally more unstable than the Miyoko because it's just there's a lot more shit up top.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's
could
the
just be
only
better
thing
crews.
Scuttle.
It's just someone knew where to put the charges in a better position.
Yes.
Yeah, it can just be something.
I'm trying to remember if they were historically scuttled or not. I don't remember which one was scuttled and which one was just outright buoy sunk by enemy fire.
Simply put, yeah, that's pretty much long and short of it. Next question. Why did the British Empire and Americans not use the surplus Regia Marina ships to build up the Marina Militaire? Long story short, they did. They did. They actively
used by the French.
Yeah, they did. And also to be fair, any shit the core of the Marine Militaire, once all of their war prizes are gone, is what's left. That is the thing.
I guess also don't forget there's a bunch of Italian ships that got sunk by German X-Frits.
Yes, this is the thing. What was left after the Regia Marina was disbanded, the war prizes were gone, and various scrappings took place, was the foundation of the Marine Militaire. It was all Italian at first. They had to then get injections of...
Wasn't it 6 Fletchers at first?
I mean, there's probably injections somewhere, but
yeah, that's the thing.
They did get Fletchers in the mid-50s.
Yeah, it's basically because the Italians say, look, we are trying to rebuild some of our World War II era surplus, but if you want us to defend the Mediterranean and do our part in NATO, we need some semi-modern, fairly reliable combatants. And the US says, no problem, Chief, I got you covered, and sends them a bunch of Frammed Fletchers, and I think a few Gearings as well. And then, of course, you see gradually ships that are the ships that have served in the Second World War re-enter service, looking almost thoroughly unrecognizable. Like, one of them goes through so incredibly bizarre a rebuild that when it returns to service, it's basically a new ship of a different class. Even though...
a cruiser with ICBMs.
Yep, basically.
It's a shame they had to get rid of the Littorios. What could they have done with those?
I
want a VLS Littorio, goddammit.
I kind of understand. Yeah, Red Fleet timeline, it's coming. It is definitely coming.
Yeah, we've got to
plenty
hit
of
Fleet
time for
more so
this
he
year.
turns red.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, with 10 minutes to go until the 3-hour mark, is your Catchup Ramblings. Thank you very much, Killerman, for being here.
Always a pleasure.
It's lovely to have you.
Cheerio.
And for everyone else, Foxo is now going to do a funny thing. First things first, let me just shut the stream on YouTube down to officially end the Catchup Ramblings. Take care, everybody. And I will catch you all on Monday for Rambling 70.